Chapter 443. Whoosh. The wind waves, fire waves, and gravel caused by the strong explosion were constantly flying in all directions with the whistling of the wind. From time to time, they would rush to the sky and expand from time to time, turning the area within 100 meters of the center of the explosion into a scene like a red lotus hell. Under the attentive gazes of countless people in the distance, the wind and fire waves finally slowly dissipated, gradually allowing the scene within to be exposed under the sun once again. The first thing that entered everyone's line of sight was a mess on the ground. Just like a joke, the ground that was still intact not long ago seemed to have been hit by a huge meteorite falling from the sky at this moment, exposing pitch-black rock formations and terrifying craters. Traces of smoke and fire were still undulating in the corners of the huge crater. The inside of the huge crater was all scorched black as if it had been burned by a raging fire. And in the huge crater, a figure holding a pitch-black knight's sword with 2 pairs of light wings made of black light on his back was undulating with a brilliant white light. His body was very clean, and the previous shocking explosion seemed to have been completely annihilated by the layer of brilliant white light on his body. It did not cause any damage to his body. That was naturally Noah. Not far away from Noah, another figure knelt on the ground with one knee on the ground, his hand covering his chest. His entire body was emitting light smoke, and the black gas-like manna around him had completely dissipated. He looked extremely miserable. Clearly, compared to Noah, Hades had indeed suffered a direct hit from the shocking explosion just now, and he was even injured. The person who could overwhelmingly suppress Makarov was injured in the hands of Noah just like that. This fact shocked the group of fairy tales magic shooters and made them extremely excited. Good. Naz could not help but shout. Let's send him flying like this. Noah. As expected of him. Gray also looked quite excited. That guy is no match for him at all. So powerful. Lucy was already stunned. Truly amazing, so Noah is this strong? Even Levi exclaimed in disbelief. Seriously. I can't compare to him at all. Elisha, Mira, and Lisanna smiled at each other, their hearts filled with pride. As for Makarov, his eyes were filled with shock as if he couldn't believe what he saw. Laxus clenched his fists tightly and laughed bitterly. Is this his true strength? However, the group of fairy tale magic shooters who were in shock did not know that Noah, who had caused all this, was looking straight at Hades. He could not help but frown when he saw that Hades' body was emitting light smoke, and his clothes were more or less tattered. He seemed to be in a sorry state, but in fact, he did not suffer much damage at all. As expected, even if all kinds of runes were used together, magic alone would not be able to cause much damage to a high-level opponent. There were actually many limitations to magic. Even the seemingly all-encompassing rune magic was the same. For example, its power was weak. Unlike the magic of this world, the advantage of magic was that it had a corresponding effect in all kinds of fields, but in terms of power, it was not particularly outstanding. After all, magic was originally a kind of power that existed in the root, and there was only so much of this kind of power. The more people who used it, the weaker the magic would be. Therefore, magicians would treat the concealment of magic as the most important thing. Therefore, even if Noah used all kinds of powerful runes together, it would not be able to cause much damage to Hades. Of course, since Noah said, as expected, it proved that he had more or less guessed the situation, so after detonating the runes, he added a real blow. If someone were to observe carefully, they would definitely be able to discover it. In Noah's hand, the tip of the knight's sword was dripping with a trace of dark red blood. And in Hades's hand that was covering his chest, traces of dark red blood also slowly flowed out. Feeling the pain coming from his chest, Hades's face slightly twisted. It was because of anger. To actually do it to this extent, it seems that I still underestimated you, little brat. With a gloomy voice that contained extreme viciousness, Hades stood up, and his gaze that seemed to be able to cut people into pieces directly nailed onto Noah's body. But, you don't think that you can beat me like this, do you? Saying such a sentence, Hades once again released that extremely majestic magic that seemed to have no limit, as if it had no consumption from the beginning, and stretched out his hand towards Noah. The familiar magic formation once again rotated in front of Hades's palm. Seeing this scene, everyone's body tensed up, and their heartbeats also sped up. Only Noah's eyes flashed with a touch of ridicule. Then, something that no one expected happened. Gotcha, just like this, without the slightest warning, the magic formation in front of Hades suddenly stagnated, and with a sudden cracking sound, a crack appeared. Wah! Hades turned pale with fright. At this moment, cracks covered the entire magic array in front of Hades's palm, and then, with a bang, it directly burst open. Impossible! Hades cried out involuntarily. My magic, your magic? On the opposite side, Noah sarcastically smiled and suddenly raised a knight's sword in his hand. The magic you're talking about, is this? As soon as his voice fell, the pitch-black knight's sword in Noah's hand suddenly ignited a burst of blue flame, and a magic formation that was exactly the same as the one used by Hades fluctuated in front of the sword, and with a crisp sound of collision, it spat out a magic chain. Whoosh! In Hades's fiercely narrowed pupils, the magic chain was like a bullet that shot out of a barrel. With the momentum of a meteor, it flashed through the air, and with a sharp sound, it fiercely shot towards Hades's direction. Hades reacted in time, and hurriedly retreated. His figure flashed, and he quickly dodged to the side. However, almost at the same time, Noah suddenly waved a knight's sword in his hand, causing the magic chain connected to the knight's sword to tremble. With a swing, the magic chain forcefully turned when Hades changed direction, and with friction in the air, it caught up with Hades. Pah! The hook at the front of the magic chain was like a poisonous snake that directly bit into the arm of the alarmed Hades. Ha! Noah coldly shouted, and stretched out his other hand to grab the magic chain connected to the knight's sword, and forcefully pulled and flung it. Suddenly, the magic chain that bit Hades' arm pulled Hades up, and heavily threw him to the ground. Pung! Hades, who lost his balance, fell to the ground with his back, and fiercely smashed into the ground. Goo! Feeling the pain from his back, Hades let out a muffled groan, but very quickly, his face hardened. He stretched out his hand to grab the magic chain, and using it to jump up, he once again landed on the ground. He also forcefully pulled on the magic chain, and fought with Noah. While pulling on the magic chain, Hades stared at Noah, his eyes were filled with viciousness and disbelief. You took away my magic? Noah met Hades' eyes full of disbelief, and the corner of his mouth raised into a provocative arc. Noah's knight's sword had the true power of the Black Tea King. It was a power that could take away the ability of others. However, to use this power, the most basic prerequisite was to come into contact with the opponent. Therefore, when using the knight's sword to cut Hades, Noah also released the power of the Black Tea King, and took away Hades' magic chain. Hades, who had reached the realm of dancing with magic, had been using this seemingly ordinary but extremely troublesome magic. Now, this magic was taken away by Noah, and Hades' threat decreased a little. Shio! At this moment, accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, a crystal ball with extreme speed shot towards Noah's direction. Chapter 444. Whoosh! When the sound of something breaking through the air approached from afar and shot towards Noah's direction, most of the magic shooters from Fairy Tale who were watching the battle from afar did not notice it. Only those who were able to sense it were Makarov, Alusha, Mira, and Laxas, who were all S-rank magic shooters and above. At that moment, everyone, including Laxas, was suddenly startled. Careful! Actually, Noah did not need to be reminded as he had already sensed it. Although he was wholeheartedly in a state of battle, when there was hostility, malice, and killing intent directed towards Noah, Noah's sensing ability would automatically be triggered, allowing him to sense everything. Therefore, when the sound of the crystal ball piercing through the air was heard, Noah immediately noticed the crystal ball that was shooting towards him. Without any hesitation, he lifted the knight's sword that was connected to the magic chain at the front end. However, at the same time, the crystal ball that was shooting towards Noah like a bullet stopped for no reason and changed its direction, shooting towards the tip of the knight's sword. There, it was connected to the magic chain that bound Hades. Bang! In the next moment, under the direct attack of the crystal ball, the magic chain connected to the knight's sword was broken with a muffled sound. Noah and Hades, who were wrestling through the magic chain, both lost their balance because of the broken chain. Their bodies were thrown backwards, but they immediately stabilized themselves. Until then, the crystal ball that had turned into an afterimage and shot through the magic chain slowly slowed down and slowly fell into the hands of a young girl. Who else could it be other than Erudia? Noah turned his head and stared coldly at Erudia. The killing intent that flashed in his eyes made Erudia feel a chill in her heart. She could not even maintain her typical charming smile and subconsciously avoided Noah's gaze. It seemed that she was afraid of Noah. However, that was not strange. Who was this man in front of her? He was someone who could confront the devil's heart head-on and turn the situation around several times. In the end, he gave Hades a head-on blow and even stole his magic. Erudia had never underestimated Noah. Being able to defeat Joseph and Jalal, who were 10th saints, was enough to prove that Noah was extraordinary. However, Erudia really did not expect Noah to be so strong that he could rival Hades. No one knew how terrifying Hades was better than Erudia. He was the closest to the abyss of the devil's path, the closest to Jerf. He had the ability to be called the strongest sorcerer in the current human world. He was more than 100 years old, and possessed unimaginable magic power and longevity. Only then did Erudia realize how terrifying Noah was. Noah was able to face Hades head-on in a one-on-one battle and even possibly defeat Hades. Naturally, a sense of fear arose in her heart. However, Erudia suppressed this trace of fear in the end. In a flash, she arrived at Hades' side. At the same time, all the members of Fairy Tale rushed over and arrived at Noah's side, confronting Hades and Erudia. "It's you?" Seeing Erudia, Elusha, Naz, Lucy, and the others who had seen Erudia in the Tower of Paradise were surprised. Gray, on the other hand, had a solemn expression on his face, and his eyes flickered. "Erudia, huh?" Hades glanced at the broken chain biting his arm, slowly turning into pure magic power and dissipating. He did not even look at Erudia as he spoke with a gloomy face. "Why did you attack? You didn't think I would lose to that brat, did you? How is that possible?" Erudia's expression did not change. She bent her body and smiled respectfully, neither servile nor overbearing. "It's just that man is really difficult to deal with. Even if President Hades can deal with him, it should take a long time. It's not suitable for us to move around in this place for too long. I think, why don't we stop here today?" "What?" The first to react to this sentence was not Hades, but Noah, who raised the knight's sword in his hand and pointed it at Hades. "Trying to escape? Being able to deal an effective blow to me seems to have given you a lot of confidence." Hades' face turned cold. The magic power on his body turned into a black gas that constantly undulated around his body. "If I wanted to, I could have attacked Magnolia directly from the beginning. The reason I didn't do so was just to show you mercy, brat." These words made Noah's face turn gloomy. Hades was right. Without the council, Hades could have led his grimoire heart into Magnolia and massacred the Fairy Tale. In that case, with Hades' strength, not to mention the Fairy Tale, even Magnolia would suffer a great deal of casualties and become a living hell. But in the end, Hades did not do so. Instead, he used troublesome means to capture the Fairy Tale magic shooters one by one to lure Noah out. With Hades' strength, if his goal was really to lure Noah out, there was no need for him to do so. After all, apart from Noah, who else could stop Hades? Could it be that Hades did this just to show his magnanimity? Of course not. You didn't attack Magnolia directly not because you were merciful, but because you were afraid. At this time, Makarov took a step forward and stared at Hades as he said, "Don't worry, Hades. Although I don't know what your goal is, you shouldn't have forgotten your words, right?" "Impossible. In Fairy Tale, there is that existence," Makarov said in a deep voice. "You were afraid of that, so you didn't attack Magnolia directly, right? Precto. When these words came out of Makarov's mouth, Hades's expression became extremely unsightly, but he did not refute. Not refuting at this time was equivalent to admitting to it. So, Noah finally understood why Hades would do such a troublesome thing as kidnapping the fairy tale magic shooters to lure Noah out. It was not because Hades was merciful, but because there was something in that fairy tale that even Hades was afraid of. It was that Makarov mentioned. What was in the fairy tale that even someone like Hades was afraid of? I've never even heard of it before. Not only Noah, but the rest of the people in the fairy tale also showed doubtful, puzzled, or at a loss. Not to mention the people in the fairy tale, even Urudia frowned and looked at Hades in bewilderment. Could it be that there was something in the fairy tale that even someone like Hades was afraid of? In the end, no one could answer this question. The black miasma around Hades slowly dissipated. He glanced at Makarov with a sinister gaze, then looked at Noah. After a while, he said these words. All right. That's all for today. After saying this, Hades turned around. Although I'm only here because I'm interested, to be able to know that there's such a person in fairy tale, and to be able to test the strength of the other party, it can be said that I didn't come here in vain. But remember, the way fairy tale exists is wrong. For Jerf, for the world of magic, I will destroy fairy tale with my own hands. After saying this, without giving anyone a chance to react, Hades and Urudia suddenly floated up and flew into the sky at an extremely fast speed. They were taken away by a ray of light. It was the light that shot out from the magic airship. Noah and the others watched the magic airship fly to the other side of the sky and fell into silence. Chapter 445. By the time all the sorcerers in fairy tale had returned to the guild, the sky had already darkened. However, today was the only time that fairy tale still managed to gather everyone even though it was already night time. Makarov questioned the missing members about the events of the past 2 days. In the end, he couldn't get anything out of them. That was because many of them said that even they didn't know what was going on. Undoubtedly, they were still doing all sorts of things a second ago when they suddenly lost consciousness. By the time they woke up again, they were already woken up by Alusha, Mira, and Lisanna, who were led by the other members of fairy tale who hadn't been taken away. This was what the companions of fairy tale, who had been captured by Hades, had said. Naz and Gray were even more miserable. They only remembered that they were drunk, and when they woke up, they were already woken up by Alusha. It was only after Mira and Lisanna explained their situation that they understood. That was to say, these missing companions didn't even realize that they had been attacked. They lost consciousness in a daze and were taken away by Hades. However, with Hades' strength, dealing with Makarov was a piece of cake, let alone dealing with the ordinary sorcerers in fairy tale who weren't even S rank. Although Naz and Gray were taken away because they were drunk and couldn't resist at all, Elfman, Kana, and the others who were about the same strength as Naz and Gray were also taken away by Hades without any resistance. Presumably, even if Naz and Gray had maintained their consciousness, they wouldn't have fared much better, right? On the other hand, because the one who attacked them wasn't Hades but Urudia, they still had a chance to fight back and buy time for free to escape. Of course, Hades took the people of fairy tale to lure out Noah, and he couldn't let Makarov know about it and use that so-called thing. It was possible that he would deliberately let someone go to tip him off. So, in the end, the sorcerers in fairy tale had no choice but to admit that all of them had been captured by a single person. Damn it. Naz seemed to be very indignant. I really can't take this lying down. Let's just go on a crusade against that grimoire heart. What nonsense are you talking about? Alusha sighed. Let's not talk about the fact that Grimoire Heart is the strongest dark guild in the magic world. Even the guild leader of Grimoire Heart, Hades, is a sorcerer above our guild leader. It's really too dangerous to make an enemy out of such an opponent. But don't we still have Noah? Gray seemed to be unable to take this lying down and said somewhat unwillingly. Noah was able to deal with Hades, and we have the president on our side. Don't tell me we can't deal with the Grimoire Heart. Although we still have Grandpa, one of the 10 great holy sorcerers, Grimoire Heart might also have a sorcerer who can match Grandpa. After all, they are the strongest dark guild. At this time, Noah shook his head. Moreover, Hades is indeed very strong. Although I'm not afraid of him, to be honest, I don't have 100% confidence that I can defeat him. That old man's strength is definitely not below mine. But Noah, don't you still have Bio? Lucy said unexpectedly. Bio can already kill Joseph, one of the 10 great holy sorcerers. If you and Bio work together, don't tell me you still can't beat that Hades? Hearing this, Noah muttered to himself. After thinking for a while, he still shook his head. It's hard to say. Although I still have Bio, I feel that Hades still has other methods that he hasn't used yet. This was the truth. Although it was only for a moment, Noah felt an unusual aura on Hades' body, or more accurately, on Hades' eye that was covered by the eye patch. It was like a volcano waiting to erupt. That strange aura even made Noah want to dig out Hades' eye to prevent it from being a threat. It could be imagined that Hades did indeed have other methods to hide, just like how Noah hid Bio. That was why even Noah didn't dare to say that he could definitely defeat Hades. Hades was indeed very strong. Even big brother Noah can't do anything? Asked Lisanna worriedly. Then what should we do? Well. Myra's smile was as gentle as ever, as if the existence of the Grimoire Heart couldn't affect her at all. Since there's no way to deal with it, then we'll just ignore it. No, that's impossible. Elusha refuted Myra's words. Have you forgotten that Hades has already made a very clear declaration that he will definitely destroy our guild? Our battle with the Grimoire Heart is absolutely unavoidable. Hearing Elusha's words, everyone suddenly thought of something and became silent. The strongest official guild Fairy Tale. The strongest dark guild Grimoire Heart. It seemed that these two guilds would have a battle sooner or later. There shouldn't be a problem, right? Lucy forced a smile. We still have Noah and Elusha, Lax's, Mishgang, Kilda's, and the guild leader on our side. It's impossible for us to lose to a dark guild, right? Hearing this, everyone's hearts calmed down. That's right. Even if the enemy was very strong, they weren't weak at all. Fairy Tale still had a chance of winning. No matter what, it's a bit too soon to talk about this. We just need to be prepared to face the enemy at any time. Noah clapped his hands and attracted everyone's attention. His strong and powerful voice echoed in the surroundings. Don't think about such troublesome things. If we really need to fight, then we'll fight to the end. We're Fairy Tale, we don't need to be afraid of any enemy. No matter what, I'll protect the guild. Inconceivably, the moment Noah said this, the uneasiness in everyone's hearts disappeared. That's right. Naz shouted excitedly. If you want to fight, then come quickly. Fairy Tale will never be afraid. Although the enemy is a magic shooter above the guild leader, we still have Noah on our side. Gray nodded heavily. There's nothing to be afraid of, just fight to the end. That's right, that's right. His fellow guild members shouted in unison, their hearts burning with passion as their blood boiled with excitement. Seeing that the guild members had such a strong collective will because of Noah's words, Makarov's heart, which was heavy because Prehito had fallen into darkness and become a member of the Dark Guild, actually eased up. Now wasn't the time to be sad and heartbroken. Since the former second guild leader had become the enemy of Fairy Tale, then there was only one thing Makarov needed to do. Fight. It was that simple. Thinking of this, Makarov's heart also settled down. Then, as if he had thought of something, his eyes became sharp. The battle with Grimoire Heart is unavoidable, but before that, we have to deal with another matter first. Saying this, Makarov turned his head and silently looked in a direction. Around him, the group of Fairy Tale's magic shooters seemed to have understood something. They all fell silent and looked in that direction. There was a person there. Laxes. Chapter 446. An indescribable silence pervaded the entire Fairy Tale guild. Everyone looked at Laxes, who was sitting at a wooden table, with complicated emotions in their eyes. Anger? A little, right? After all, everyone knew that Raxus had kidnapped Mira and Lysana in order to settle things with Noah and snatch the position of Fairy Tale's leader. As a member of Fairy Tale, attacking one of their own guild members was definitely the biggest taboo in Fairy Tale. As such, it was only natural that everyone would be angry. However, most of them were worried. No matter what, Laxus was still a member of Fairy Tale. Even if he did not treat others as his companions, there were still many in the guild who treated Laxus as one of their own. For example, Naz. For example, Gray. And for example, Alusha, Mira, Lysana, and the others more or less treated Laxus as one of their own. Under such circumstances, it was natural for them to be worried for their companions. Even Noah could not help but sigh when Makarov said that he wanted to deal with Laxus. Noah had felt anger, sympathy, pity, and pain towards Laxus, but he had never hated him. That was because Noah knew that Laxus was not a bad person. He had just taken the wrong path. As for Laxus attacking Mira and Lysana, Noah did not mind teaching Laxus a lesson. But that was it. Noah, who understood Laxus, knew that Laxus would not go so far as to attack Mira and Lysana. Otherwise, even if the other party was Noah's brother, Noah would not have let Laxus live until now. As a result, Noah felt that the grudge between him and Laxus had already ended when the victor was decided. Meanwhile, Raxus also seemed to be reflecting on his actions. He no longer had any intention of continuing to insist on the position of guild leader or the strongest. If that wasn't the case, with Raxus' character, he wouldn't have sat in a group of so many guild members. That was enough. With regards to Raxus, it was enough to have this kind of result. But Makarov clearly did not have the intention to settle things peacefully. Laxus. Makarov looked up at Laxus with his wrinkled eyes and said in a deep voice. You should know what I would do in a situation like yours, right? Hearing this, Laxus, who had been keeping his head down and silent, clenched his fists. Threatening his guild members. This crime was almost as serious as harming the guild. Although Laxus had only captured Mira and Lysana, attacking guild members was already something that Makarov could not tolerate. In that case, there was only one outcome for Laxus. Banished from the guild. As if sensing the same possibility, Freed, Bikesro, and Ibarbara who were sitting around Laxus slammed the table and stood up. Wait. Leader. Freed hurriedly said. We were the ones who attacked Mira and Lysana. Laxus did not attack. That's right. Bikesro and Ibarbara nodded. If you want to punish someone, shouldn't you punish us instead? Do you really think I'm so old that I can't see this? Makarov scolded. You were ordered to do this by Laxus, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have done such a thing. Bikesro, Alba, and Jerlin were immediately speechless. Only Freed seemed to want to say something, but he was stopped by Laxus. All right, that's enough. Laxus stood up and faced Makarov. After a moment of silence, he said this expressionlessly. Give your orders, leader. The words, President, expressed all the decisions in Raxus' heart. In the past, Laxus would only call Makarov an old man. Now, since Laxus acknowledged Makarov's identity, as a member of Fairy Tale, it meant that Laxus would accept the leader's decision. He would accept any punishment from Makarov. Is that so? Makarov closed his eyes, but everyone could feel the mixed feelings in his heart. How long had it been since Laxus acknowledged him like this? As Laxus's grandfather, ever since Makarov expelled Laxus's father, his own son, from the guild, his relationship with Laxus had been extremely tense. It was to the point that it would not be strange if they broke off all ties at any time. All these years, on the surface, Laxus had been staying in Fairy Tale, but he was becoming less and less attentive to Makarov's words, showing a rebellious mentality. If it was 7 years ago, Makarov could still order Laxus to follow Noah on missions to protect Noah, then 7 years later, if he wanted to do the same thing again, Laxus would not agree. However, after so many years, Laxus finally acknowledged Makarov once again, which meant that his relationship with Makarov was about to be repaired. However, Makarov had to make this decision for the sake of the guild. How could Makarov not have mixed feelings about this? However, no matter how mixed his feelings were, Makarov still had to make a decision. Because, since the first guild leader Mavis, every generation of guild leaders had always protected the guild in this way. Makarov opened his eyes, and there was a look of determination in his eyes. Guild leader. Naz, Gray, Elusha, Mira, and Lisanna stepped forward at almost the same time. Say no more. Without giving anyone a chance to speak, Makarov said resolutely. I've already decided. That one sentence made everyone shut their mouths. Laxas. Makarov looked at Laxas and waved his hand. I've decided to give you, wait. Grandfather. At this moment, Noah spoke. Can I be the one to execute Laxas? You? Makarov said in surprise. Let alone Makarov, even his companions were stunned. Laxas kidnapped my fiancé, and the person he's targeting is also me. This matter is already inseparable from me. Noah suddenly smiled. Besides, grandfather, you've also announced that the next guild leader of Fairy Tale is me. Then, even if I haven't succeeded the position, I still have the right to judge this matter, right? Saying this, Noah looked at Laxas. Laxas, what do you think? Laxas stared at Noah for a while before turning his head away. I don't care. Laxas. Freed, Bikesro, Alba, and Jerlin cried out in surprise. In the eyes of the three members of Thunder God Council, Noah's actions were undoubtedly revenge on Laxas. Not to mention Thunder God Council, even many of the high mages in the guild thought so. Only Mira, Lisanna, Elusha, Naz, Gray, Lebby, and the others looked at each other and smiled. Makarov's eyes also flickered. After a while, he exhaled and turned his back. Very well, it's up to you to decide. Noah smiled and shrugged. In that case, Laxas, as the fourth guild leader, I've decided to put you under house arrest. In the next 3 months, you're not allowed to accept any work, and you're not allowed to take a step out of the house. Reflect on your actions. Can you accept this? Hearing this, everyone finally understood. Noah didn't want revenge. He was just forgiving Laxas in disguise. Understanding this, Mira, Lisanna, Elusha, and the others smiled helplessly. Even Freed, Bikesro, and Alba looked at Laxas in surprise, but they were also a little worried. They were worried that with Laxas's personality, he wouldn't appreciate it. However, it was obvious that everyone was worried for nothing. House arrest. Laxas was slightly dazed. The next second, he smiled. His smile was as if he was suddenly enlightened, but also as if he was troubled. I understand. Immediately, everyone laughed. Many of them even made fun of him. For Laxas, this punishment might be quite unbearable. After all, it was too much of a punishment for a child, wasn't it? Chapter 447. Because of all kinds of things that had happened, most of the guild members were still in the guild even after the sky had turned completely dark. Therefore, by the time all the members of the guild had left, it was already late at night. In his own room, Noah, who was lying on the bed, was not sleepy at all. He stared blankly at the ceiling, and his mind could not help but flash past the conversation with Makarov. To be honest, I am a little dissatisfied with your decision. Just when most of the guild members had left, Makarov came alone to Noah's side and said with a complicated and angry tone. Laxas attacked one of our guild members. You should have given him a heavier punishment for this kind of situation. You can even expel him from the guild, but you have only confined him. How can you let your guild members feel at ease? The number 1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom. This name sounded very intimidating, but a guild was still a guild. Although the Fairy Tale was very famous, its nature still did not change. To put it bluntly, a guild was actually just a place for magic shooters to choose and execute their jobs. It was a place for mutual benefits. Naturally, no one would be willing to stay in a place where there could be a threat at any time. If a situation like Lax's who attacked one of his guild members was not dealt with properly, it would definitely bring a lot of unease to others. Who wouldn't feel uneasy when there was a dangerous person by their side at all times? Therefore, this kind of bad situation where one attacked one of their own had to be dealt with seriously. Otherwise, not to mention whether it would be able to convince the public, there would definitely be disputes in the hearts of others, and this would lead to cracks and chaos within the guild. It was precisely because of this that even if Makarov could not bear it, he had to expel Lax's from the guild. When Noah voluntarily proposed to deal with Lax's matter, Makarov more or less guessed that Noah was going to be lenient, but he did not expect it to be to this extent. As a result, Makarov was dissatisfied. "Grandpa, I can understand your desire to protect the guild, but can you have a little more confidence in everyone in the guild?" Noah sighed in response to Makarov's dissatisfaction. "Although I may sound like I'm boasting, Fairy Tale is really a great place. Even if there are people like Lax's who have done something wrong, the guild members will still care about old friendships. As long as there are friendships, then no matter how small these friendships are, it will become an excuse for the guild members to forgive Lax's. So, I'm confident that if I handle things this way, not only will everyone not feel uneasy or dissatisfied, they will even be very satisfied." "Grandpa, don't you understand?" "That's true." Makarov still couldn't let it go. "Even if the guild members don't mind, if Lax's side is not heavily punished, won't it be hard to guarantee that he won't do the same thing in the future?" "Grandpa, it's not that I want to criticize you." Noah stared at Makarov for a while, then said after a while, he was speechless. "Undoubtedly, you know best in your heart that Lax's won't do the same thing in the future, so why are you still bringing up this possibility?" Makarov was speechless. "I know, Grandpa, even if you know it in your heart, but the rules of the guild are still there. You are the guild master, so you have to set an example. But rules are meant to be changed. If you don't change them, then it's not for the good of the guild, it's pedantic," Noah said. "In short, I've already made my decision. Unless Grandpa publicly announces that I'm disqualified from being the next guild master, I won't change this decision." "You..." Makarov was speechless and could only shout out in despair. "Forget it. I don't care anymore. Do whatever you want." With that, Makarov left in a huff. Looking at Makarov's childish behavior, Noah couldn't help but laugh. Looking at Makarov's back that was about to disappear, he suddenly changed the topic and asked, "What's that?" Makarov's body froze. Noah didn't say anything else and just stared at Makarov's back without saying anything. Noah believed that Makarov could feel his gaze and understand his question. During the confrontation with Hades, Makarov said that Hades didn't attack Magnoria with great fanfare because of the existence of that in Fairy Tale. But when did Fairy Tale have something that even a character like Hades was afraid of? Although he left Fairy Tale for about 6 years, Noah grew up in Fairy Tale and was Makarov's grandson. It was impossible for him to not know about Fairy Tale. Then, what is that? If there was something that even Hades was afraid of, was it discovered in the 6 years after Noah joined Fairy Tale, or did it already exist? And from Makarov's performance during the confrontation with Hades, the so-called that didn't seem to be something that could be openly taken out. It definitely couldn't be ignored. Therefore, Noah had to ask this question. That's not something that can be casually asked. I hope you don't ask. Under Noah's gaze, Makarov's stiff body gradually relaxed, and he sighed. That's true, but as the next president of Fairy Tale, you are qualified to know this matter. After saying such a sentence, Makarov left without looking back. When you become the president of Fairy Tale, I will tell you everything, but before that, don't ask anything, and I won't say anything. After saying that, Makarov left directly. Looking at Makarov's gradually fading back, Noah didn't move at all and remained silent for a long time. Thinking back to that conversation, Noah's heart couldn't calm down. Although he didn't know what the so-called that in a fairy tale was, but if it could threaten Hades, then it could most likely threaten Noah as well. Of course, Noah wasn't afraid because of the existence of such a thing in a fairy tale, but he couldn't help but ponder. Since fairy tale had such an existence, then wouldn't there be similar things in other places? Just like the magical elven power of the council and our system that Jalal used 8 years to build, there must be many more in this world, right? Then, if he were to encounter such things in the future, would he be able to walk through it as smoothly as before? Would he be able to protect Mira and Lysana? Would he be able to protect his companions? And how many existences as powerful as Hades were there in this world? When these existences appear in front of him and become his enemy, would he still be able to turn misfortune into blessing? Ideas after ideas kept appearing in Noah's mind, making Noah finally realize the vastness of this world. Driven by such feelings, Noah murmured, "I have to become stronger." Noah had the idea of leaving this world. After all, if he wanted to become stronger, blindly training was no longer effective for the current Noah, not to mention that Noah's achievements in magic had reached a bottleneck. If he continued to ponder, it would be better to travel to different worlds like before and find ways to strengthen himself. For example, the protozoan virus in the world of the Black Bullet, the Daybreak Star pattern in the world of Absolute Dual Blades, the magic of Night of the Magi, and so on. Although it wasn't much, it did allow Noah to grow considerably. Therefore, it was definitely feasible to go to other worlds to find ways to strengthen himself. Chapter 448. Leaving fairy tale and continuing to travel to other worlds, searching for world fragments while looking for ways to strengthen himself. This thought almost instantly occupied Noah's entire mind. Originally, Noah knew that he would sooner or later embark on a journey to other worlds, but he never thought it would be so soon. It had been less than a month since Noah had returned to fairy tale, and it was only recently that he had confirmed his relationship with Mira and Lysana, as well as the marriage contract. Although Mira and Lysana could understand Noah's decision and would not oppose Noah's departure, Noah really did not want to leave them so soon. Besides, the fairy tale also had the threat of the devil's heart. Hades had already announced in public that he would destroy fairy tale sooner or later. No one knew when this declaration would come true. Noah was worried that in the process of going to other worlds to train and travel, the fairy tale would be attacked by the grimoire heart. In that case, without Noah, fairy tale would really end up in a disastrous situation. After all, even Makarov had been suppressed by Hades. With the strength that Hades had shown, even if Kildas, Laxas, and Mishgang were to participate in the battle, as well as the rank Alusha and Mira, it would be difficult to defeat him. Apart from Noah, there was really no one in fairy tale who could suppress Hades. Perhaps, if Naz's potential was fully unleashed, it should be possible. Noah did not know why this thought appeared in his mind. Naz had unlimited possibilities. This was something that Noah had known for a long time. Therefore, at a critical moment, a fully unleashed Naz might really have a way to deal with Hades, right? However, this possibility was too baseless and could not be relied on at all. If he wanted to deal with Hades cleanly, then it was necessary to go to other worlds to find opportunities to become stronger. However, once he left this world, Noah could not be sure when Hades would bring the grimoire heart to fairy tale to cause trouble. In this way, the whole problem had reached a dead end. Of course, fairy tale still had that thing that Makarov had mentioned. Presumably, Hades would not be able to rashly cause trouble for fairy tale in the short term. However, what should he do if he slowly disintegrated the guild in secret like last time? Coupled with the fact that he could not bear to part with Mira and Lysana, Noah fell into a dilemma. At this moment, Noah felt his heart suddenly skip a beat as though it was reacting to something. There was an inexplicable feeling in his heart. What's going on? Noah was a little surprised as he clutched his heart, feeling that inexplicable feeling grow stronger and stronger. He could not help but feel a little anxious. After hesitating for a while, Noah seemed to have an epiphany and had such an idea. Let's go back to Between Worlds to take a look first. With that thought, Noah closed his eyes. In the next moment, without any warning, Noah, who was lying on the bed, inexplicably disappeared, causing the entire room to lose the aura of a living person. What entered his eyes was still pure white as always. Ding! In the light sound, pieces of intact or incomplete feathers floated back and forth in the pure white world. Like little birds, they happily gathered beside Noah, who had suddenly appeared and circled around him, as if they were welcoming Noah. Looking at these feathers, Noah felt as if he was looking at a spoiled child. His entire heart calmed down, and it was unbelievable. At this time, a voice appeared in Noah's mind. "Can you hear my voice? Little Noah." When he heard this voice, Noah's first reaction was to jump in fright. So far, in between worlds, Noah had never heard a second voice other than himself, let alone a second person. Being able to enter between worlds was like Noah's privilege. At least, Noah had never seen a second person here. Now, with such a voice suddenly appearing, it would be strange if Noah was not scared. However, immediately after, a second voice also sounded in Noah's mind. "Don't be surprised, other than you, no one can get rid of the world's shackles and enter between worlds through the world's barrier. Right now, we are only talking to you through the world's barrier." This was a very cold voice, and it was not an exaggeration to say that it was indifferent. The voice in front was slightly more cheerful, and it felt a little like a child's naivety. These two voices formed a sharp contrast in all aspects, causing Noah's memories to awaken. At this moment, Noah said with some surprise, "Is it Gaia and Alea?" Just as this sentence fell, the cheerful and naive voice from before sounded with strong dissatisfaction. "Not Gaia, its mother." Hearing this sentence, Noah immediately confirmed that the owner of the voice was Gaia and Alea. "Although we are now in different worlds, as the representatives of the world's will, we still feel that you seem to be troubled, so we called out to you." Alea's calm voice echoed in Noah's mind. "Actually, we just want to tell you this, do what you want to do." "Do what I want to do?" Noah was stunned. "Little Noah, you have to remember that you are an existence chosen by all the worlds. You are the darling of all the worlds," Gaia said seriously, which was rare for her. "You are helping the world, and the world will help you. Although the world can't directly bestow you power and use it in a world that already exists, at least the world won't cause you trouble when you are helping them. Pray," Alea said concisely. "Pray to the world, tell your troubles, and the world will respond to you." Hearing this, Noah's heart involuntarily throbbed, causing him to speak out the voice in his heart. "I am just worried that my departure will cause trouble for my lover and family." Undoubtedly, this was just a superficial statement, but Gaia and Alea seemed to have seen through all the thoughts in Noah's heart and understood the beginning of the whole thing. "What?" Gaia's voice sounded a little discouraged. "I sense the troubles in your heart across two worlds. I thought it was something very serious, but in the end, it was just this?" Not to mention Gaia, even Alea seemed to be in disbelief. "This problem isn't that hard to solve." Noah was stunned at first, then he was delighted. "Is there a way to solve this problem?" "A world has a past, present, and future," Alea said. "However, in between worlds, there is no such thing as past, present, or future. Little Noah, the place where you are now is the place where all the worlds exist. When you entered between worlds, you were already outside the timeline. It is very similar to our situation in this world." Gaia continued Alea's words. "Then, here is the problem. When you enter a world in between worlds where there is no timeline, little Noah, you must also enter the timeline of this world. Then, how did you determine the time of your arrival in this world?" Hearing Gaia's words, Noah was also suspicious. Using Gaia and Alea's words, a world has different time points, namely the past, present, and future. Since Noah existed in between worlds where there was no timeline, then when he entered a world, how did he determine the time of his arrival? Thinking about this, Noah immediately thought of a possibility. Chapter 449. There was no such thing as time in between worlds, but the worlds that truly existed lacked time. Without time, the world would have lost its foundation, and the result would be that the world itself would not be able to exist. Space and time. These were two essential elements of a world. The only exception to this was perhaps between worlds. But in between worlds where time did not exist, what did Noah use as a basis to determine the time of arrival? Noah had never considered this question before, but now that he thought about it, there was only one answer. The worlds that Noah arrived in, or rather the time that Noah arrived in, all had one thing in common. World fragments. Noah suddenly opened his mouth. Every time I descend, there will always be the existence of world fragments. Although he did not know the reason, but some of the worlds in and between worlds were destroyed. These destroyed worlds were all turned into fragments and were lost in the intact worlds. Naturally, when these world fragments were lost in the intact worlds, they were the same as Noah's situation, and needed to enter the world's time axis. Then, if Noah arrived at a time when the world fragments were not present, then wouldn't he not be able to find the world fragments? Thus, if Noah wanted to find the world fragments, he could only arrive at a time when the world fragments were present. Correct answer. Gaia responded energetically. When little Noah chooses to arrive in a world, the world will automatically send you to a time when the world fragments are present. Although the world is not a dry world, it can faintly sense each other. Thus, when you encounter a clue to the world fragments, you will receive a hint from the world. Alea explained with a completely emotionless voice. It's the same principle as the last time when we could vaguely sense which parallel space the world fragment that exists in our world is in. Of course, the world will also know the time when the world fragment that is lost inside is located and send you there. This kind of teleportation is similar to an instinctive existence. It can be considered a function of the world itself. Just like how a lamp can emit light, when the switch is turned on, it will emit light. Little Noah, you are equivalent to that switch. Gaia said with a laugh. Therefore, little Noah, please answer this question. If the world fragments that were lost in a world were recovered by you, when you arrive in this world, what basis will the world use to choose the time when you arrive? This sentence was like a heavy hammer, waking up Noah and shaking Noah's spirit. You spent a total of 2 years in another world, and when you returned to the world that gave birth to you, the time when you arrived was also 2 years later in that world. Alea said calmly. When the world fragments no longer exist in a world, and you did not choose the time when you arrived, then the world will let you arrive according to the time when you actually left. Did not choose the time. Noah keenly grasped the key words and became excited because of a guess. Are you saying that I can choose the time when I arrive? As previously said, the world will take the initiative to send you to the time when the world fragments exist, but if the world fragments do not exist, then the world can only send you to the time when you actually passed. Just like how you spent 2 years in the outside world and returned to your original world 2 years later. Gaia said with the tone of a little adult. However, little Noah, I also said that you are the darling of the world, and the world will not reject you. If the world fragments do not exist in a world, then as long as you make a request to the world when you arrive, the world will definitely respond to you. Alea told Noah the good news that he wanted to know the most. So, you don't have to worry about this. Just do what you want to do. Gaia and Alea's words made all the gloominess in Noah's heart disappear, and he was suddenly enlightened. If he could freely choose the time, then what was there to worry about? When it was time to return, wouldn't it be fine to directly descend to the time when Noah left? This way, Noah would not have to worry about Hades launching an attack when he was not around, nor would he have to worry about his departure affecting Mila and Lisanna. Everyone was happy. For the first time, Noah sincerely thanked the world. However, Gaia, who seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts, reminded him. However, little Noah, even if the world fragments do not exist in the world, you will not be able to arrive at the time when you left. As if a basin of cold water had been poured on his heart, Noah hurriedly asked. Why? Although you are a rather special existence that can freely leave space and time, passing through the world barrier and entering the between worlds, it is also a fact that you truly exist in the world you once existed in. If you choose to leave the current time, then the world will need a period of time to buffer. During this period of time, you will not be able to arrive. Alea explained. This period of time is roughly equivalent to a month in each world. Even if you choose to arrive at the time when you left, the world will send you to a month after the time you chose. In other words, if Noah left the world of fairy tale, he would only be able to arrive a month after he left this world. Noah's heart finally settled. A month was not a long time at all. After all, in fairy tale, some of the more difficult missions would sometimes take several months to complete, and some of the S-rank missions and above would sometimes take several years to complete. If it was a month, Noah would only need to accept a more troublesome mission, and he would not even need to explain why he left. Mira and Lisanna would also be able to wait for a month. As for Hades, if he chose to start an all-out war with fairy tale in a short month, then Noah would have no choice but to accept it. Little Noah, you must remember that you are the darling of the world. Gaia's voice was still as innocent as ever. Even if there is no way to directly help you, the world will choose to help you in all sorts of unorthodox areas. You have the support of many worlds behind you, so there is no need to fear anything. Do whatever you want to do. Alea said. The world will always be on your side. The words from Gaia and Alea made Noah's heart feel unprecedentedly steady. Sure enough, he still liked the world. When Noah returned to fairy tale once again, the sky was already bright. Undoubtedly, when he left, it was still night, but when he returned, it was already bright. This phenomenon made Noah suspicious, and at the same time, he felt as if he had forgotten something important. With this suspicion, Noah did not choose to lie down and sleep, but instead went downstairs and returned to the guild. What Noah did not expect was that when he appeared, the members of the guild actually looked at him in disbelief. Big Brother Noah. Lisanna, who was originally serving drinks, threw down the tray in her hands and threw herself into Noah's embrace with 2 streams of tears. Not only Lisanna, but even Mira, who was in a daze, ran out of the bar counter. In a state of panic, she almost fell down. She rushed to Noah's side and tightly grasped one of his arms. Tears almost flowed out of her eyes. Just as Noah fell into a daze, Elisha and the others rushed over aggressively. You bastard. Why did you disappear without a word? Gray fiercely punched Noah. Do you know how worried we were? You're exaggerating, aren't you? Noah said blankly. Didn't I just leave for a while? A while? Elisha glared at Noah. You disappeared for an entire month. Chapter 450. You disappeared for an entire month. Like a bolt from the blue, Noah came to a sudden realization. Only now did Noah realize that he had overlooked something important. Gaia and Alea had said that if Noah left the world he was in, then when he entered that world again, he would only be able to return to a month after he left. This didn't only refer to how long Noah had been in the other world. In Fairy Tale's world, only a month would have passed. This also meant that even if Noah had only left Fairy Tale's world for less than a second, a month would have passed here. That is to say, in the eyes of the people in the world of Fairy Tale, Noah had indeed inexplicably disappeared for a month. Realizing this, Noah almost broke out in cold sweat. He didn't think that there would be such a drawback. He had to be more careful next time. Big Brother Noah, where did you run off to? Lisanna shouted with a face full of grievance and anger. I've been worried this whole time. The group of Fairy Tale's companions also glared at Noah, especially Elisha, Naz, Gray, Lucy, Lebby, and the others. They all looked like they wanted to bite Noah, causing Noah to bitterly smile in his heart. Who knew that the result would be like this? Noah could only glance at Mira for help, but what he received was Myra's indignant expression, causing Noah's bitter smile to become even more intense. Even the gentle Mira was like this. It seemed that his 1-month absence had really worried everyone. Originally, Noah had wanted to come back and say goodbye before leaving. Otherwise, disappearing for a month without any reason would definitely cause his companions in Fairy Tale to worry. But now, it seemed that the result would be the same. Fortunately, it was only a month. Sorry, I really didn't expect it to take so long. At that moment, Noah could only give a half-truth explanation. After all, I was in a bit of a rush. When I left, I thought that I would be back in a while. In the end, it took so long. I apologize. I'm sorry. After saying that, Noah reached out and pulled both Mira and Lisanna into his embrace, whispering softly to them. Don't be angry, there won't be a next time. Hearing this, Mira and Lisanna's hearts softened and they no longer pursued the matter. Why did you suddenly leave for a month? Elisha asked the most important question on behalf of everyone. It wasn't just Mira and Lisanna. Even the president was very worried. She thought that Hades had made a move on you. She almost led the entire fairy tale to look for Grimoire Heart to fight to the death. Undoubtedly, he had a great battle with Hades that day, and then disappeared inexplicably that night. Under such circumstances, it was inevitable that Makarov would have such thoughts. Noah was simply unable to speak of his bitterness. In the end, after hesitating for a while, he gave such an answer as if he had given up on himself. If I said that my mother was looking for me, what would you all think? Mother? Everyone, including Mira and Lisanna, widened their eyes in shock. Mother? Noah's mother? But those who were familiar with Noah's background all knew that Noah was originally an orphan without parents. That was why he was adopted by Makarov. Where did his mother come from? As for those who were not familiar with Noah's background, they were even more confused. For a moment, they looked at each other, all of them lost the ability to speak. But to be precise, Noah wasn't lying. After all, even if Noah didn't admit it himself, Gaia and Alea both claimed to be Noah's mother. Noah's words could be completely taken as the truth, or even the truth. Seeing that his companions in the guild were all in a state of confusion, Noah laughed dryly and sighed. Forget it, I was just joking. Don't take it seriously. Mira, Lisanna, Elisha, and the rest looked at each other, but at the same time, they chose to keep quiet and not ask any more questions. Although they didn't know what had happened, Noah clearly had some difficulties that he couldn't speak of. It might even be related to his background. As companions, they couldn't just blindly ask at this time. Thus, even if they were confused, they didn't ask any more questions. It's good that Big Brother Noah is back. Lisanna quickly changed the topic in an attempt to change the atmosphere. It's good that you're fine, right? Are you hungry? A gentle expression appeared on Myra's face again. She even reached out and wiped the sweat off Noah's forehead with her soft and slender hands. Shall I make you something to eat? Actually, Noah wasn't hungry. He was just a little sleepy. When he left this world, it was at night. At that time, Noah didn't feel sleepy at all because of all sorts of things. But now that the matter had been resolved, the drowsiness and everything else had instantly returned. However, it wouldn't be good for him to go back to his room to sleep. Noah could only nod. Then eat a little. Mira smiled in satisfaction and returned to the bar. Big Brother Noah, Lisanna said angrily. Don't disappear for no reason in the future, okay? Really, you should have at least said goodbye before leaving. Gray shook his head. You didn't even tell Mira and Lisanna before disappearing. If it weren't for our confidence in your strength, we would have suspected that something had happened to you. Let's report to the president later. Even Elisha complained, which was rare. Other than Mira and Lisanna, the president is the one who's most worried about you. If there's anything we can help with, just let us know. Lucy patted her extremely full chest. Although Noah is very strong, there must be something we can help with. I haven't learned all the runes, yet. Levi suddenly smiled. So, you can't have anything happen to you. I won't feel good if you disappear before the outcome of the battle is decided. Naz grinned and laughed. Don't forget our agreement, Noah. Love. Even hubby raised his hand. We're all companions, don't be polite. You're my brother-in-law. If something happens to you, my sister and Lisanna will definitely be sad. A man who makes a woman sad is not a man. Elfman said loudly. If that's the case, even a man won't forgive you. Well, let's drink together when we're free. Kana winked at Noah. With her mature appearance doing this, it was as if she was flirting. Sister, I'll definitely teach you how to drink. Listening to the different contents from each of his companions, but the concern in their words was exactly the same, Noah could not help but reveal a smile. It seemed that he didn't just like the world, but also some of the people in the world. Fairy tale. His home. In order to protect his home, Noah had to become stronger. Since the devil's heart intended to destroy Fairy Tale, then it didn't matter if Hades was the former second-generation leader of Fairy Tale. Since he was the enemy of Fairy Tale, the method to deal with Fairy Tale was already clear. Perhaps there was no way now, but in the future, Noah would go to various worlds and search for world fragments while looking for ways to strengthen himself and make himself stronger. When he returned again, only a month would have passed in this world. However, at that time, Noah would have been reborn once again and couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Just like what Gaia and Alea had said, behind Noah stood various worlds. The worlds would always stand on Noah's side. With this cheating method that only a month would have passed when he returned, no matter how long he spent in other worlds, Noah couldn't not become stronger even if he wanted to. If Hades knew all this, he would definitely regret making Noah an enemy. After all, the two of them weren't on the same starting line from the beginning. Looking at the familiar faces and the warm and noisy atmosphere in the guild, Noah shook his hand. Just wait. Chapter 451. Hua. The extremely loud sound of waves mixed with the faint cry of seagulls could be heard constantly reverberating on the golden beach under the setting sun, giving people a very dreamy feeling. This was the first scene that Noah saw when he opened his eyes after leaving the world of Fairy Tale, and chose to enter another world. Perhaps because it was dusk, there were not many people on the dreamy beach. There were only a few young men in swimsuits who were immersed in the beautiful beach world. Noah looked around and observed a group of people who were playing beach volleyball not far from him. It was a group of young men who looked like they were not from the East. Not only them, but the people on the beach were basically like this. One look and you could tell that they were not from the East. It seems that this is not China or Japan. Noah made a rough judgment. Well, it's also possible that it's a completely unrelated place. So far, the worlds that Noah had been to were Fairy Tale, Black Bullet, Absolute Dual Blades, and Night of the Magician. Among them, the Black Bullet, Absolute Dual Blades, and the Night of the Magicians, all had their own differences, but without exception, they were all set in the modern world. The only exception was Fairy Tale. Therefore, Noah felt that if the world he had arrived in was set in the modern world, then the place he was now in was most likely a foreign country. Otherwise, it would be like the world of Fairy Tale, which was not set in the modern world. I hope it's the former. In the world of a Black Bullet, Noah used a short 1 year to learn all the languages in the world so that he would not run into a wall in other worlds because of language problems. If the world he was in now was also set in the modern world, then even if he came to a foreign country, Noah would not have to worry about the language barrier. On the contrary, Noah might encounter a language barrier and would have to worry about it for a long time. Anyway, let's find someone to ask first. With this thought in mind, Noah quickly caught a passerby. Can I ask you something? First of all, Noah used English. After all, the 3 modern worlds that he had descended upon in the past basically used English as the international language. Even during diplomacy, English was more often used. Therefore, since the place they landed in was similar to a foreign country, then if this world was also set in modern times, it would be more possible to communicate in English. However, the young man who was caught by Noah scratched his head in distress and uttered a sentence in his mind. Are they foreign tourists? Hearing this sentence, Noah's heart immediately relaxed. Although it wasn't English, it was Italian. Noah had learned all the languages of the modern world. Naturally, Italian was one of them. At that moment, Noah switched to Italian and spoke fluently to the young man. I'm sorry, I am indeed a foreign tourist, but I'm lost now. Can I ask you something? Hearing Noah use extremely fluent Italian, the young man was surprised, but at the same time, his expression couldn't help but show a trace of relief. If there was a language barrier, it was indeed very difficult to communicate. This was true for both parties who needed to communicate. If it were a more indifferent person, he would wave his hand and drive people away when he encountered a person who didn't speak the language barrier, or simply leave the person behind. But this young man didn't seem to be that kind of person, and he was quite enthusiastic. So, Noah got the information he needed through some inquiries. As Noah thought, this world was set in the modern world, but it was not China or Japan, but Italy. Noah more or less guessed this from the young man using Italian. Noah was now at the southern end of Italy, a resort island floating on the Mediterranean Sea, Sardinia. This was a resort island with a population of only about 10,000 people. It was surrounded by clear seawater, and the surrounding natural environment was also very beautiful. Naturally, the biggest industry of such a resort island was sightseeing. Whenever summer came, Sardinia would be flooded with tourists with the purpose of going to Europe for vacation, especially the coast in the northeast, which was a special resort for noble people. Sardinia and the surrounding islands formed the autonomous prefecture of Sardinia, and the capital, Cagliari, was a port in the south of the island. Now, Noah was on the beach not far from Cagliari. In addition, he used English at the beginning, so the young man thought that Noah was a foreign tourist. After getting the information that he wanted, Noah expressed his gratitude to the young man who had accompanied him for a long time. In return, he received a smile from the young man that was definitely not a hypocritical one. After bidding farewell to each other, Noah saw the young man off. It's said that Italians are more enthusiastic. I thought only women were like this, but I didn't expect men to be the same. I just don't know if they are bold or not. With this sentence as an inspiration, Noah raised his head and looked at the road to Cagliari that the young man pointed out to him. I just don't know if this world is as ordinary as it looks on the surface. In the world of The Dark Bullet, there were cursed children, protogut animals, and even new human creation project, mechanical soldiers like Rentaro and Leech Kajian. In the world of Absolute Dual Blade, there were surpassers, Godslayer, and other individuals with power beyond human beings. As for the Night of Sorcerers, in addition to magicians, there were all kinds of other existences. It was not as peaceful as it looked on the surface. Was this world the same? This was Noah's question. However, if this was the case, it was more in line with Noah's intentions. After all, in addition to looking for world fragments, Noah also had to find a way to strengthen himself. If this was an ordinary world, then Noah would not be able to achieve his second goal. In any case, it's getting dark. Let's go to the city and find a hotel to rest first. Because of Gaia and Alea's call, Noah left the world of fairy tale and went to Between Worlds. As a result, when he returned, he mysteriously disappeared for a month. After that, Noah accompanied his two fiancées, Mira and Lisanna, for a whole week. After a week, he used work as an excuse to accept a mission that would take a long time. He did his best to solve it in 3 days before returning to this world. This way, when Noah returned to the world of fairy tale, even if a month had passed, Noah could use the excuse of, it took more time than expected, as an excuse. When he left the world of fairy tale, it was already night time, and Noah was already a little sleepy. As for the problem of identity, well, let's talk about it tomorrow. Leaving this sentence, Noah walked in the direction of the city. At this time, Noah did not know. In a cold drink shop that sold ice cream in the distance, a handsome blonde man wearing a shirt and shorts, holding a cup of ice cream in his hand, who looked like he was on vacation, was gazing at Noah's back that was gradually disappearing into the distance with sparkling eyes that almost made people wonder if they would shine. Beside him, a man wearing glasses was looking at the blonde man with an expression of disgust and disgust. However, when he saw the blonde man's expression, he immediately frowned and said in a strange tone that could not be said to be respectful or rude. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." The blonde man casually replied and walked in the direction he was looking at. "You idiot." The man wearing glasses hurriedly chased after him and swallowed the last word he wanted to say with difficulty. "What do you want now?" Hearing this, the blonde man laughed heartily. "Nothing, I just saw an interesting person and wanted to say hello." Chapter 452. Noah arrived at Cagliari smoothly and entered the crowded streets. Since this world was set in the modern world, then if he walked along the main road, he would at least meet people in the end, so he would not be completely lost. In addition, Noah also met some passers-by on the way. Under the enthusiastic guidance of the other party, it was naturally impossible for him to not find the city. Undoubtedly, even if it was the capital of Sardinia, Cagliari was just a port. It was not that big, but surprisingly, there were many people here, and even many foreigners. That was natural. After all, this was a holiday island. Amidst the noise on the streets, Noah kept walking towards the city center. However, before he could walk far, Noah's footsteps came to a halt. In Noah's superb perception ability, Noah clearly felt an extremely unusual aura. It was the aura of a person. Moreover, it was very obvious that it was not the aura of an ordinary person. Because an ordinary person could not have such an aura that was like an unsheathed sword, extremely sharp, and made Noah's heart tighten. That was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the owner of this aura seemed to be coming in the direction of Noah, and he even extended his hand to Noah. If the other party wanted to harm Noah, then Noah would instantly feel the existence of killing intent, hostility, or malice, but Noah did not feel any of that. Therefore, the other party's hand that was extended towards Noah should be intending to put his hand on Noah's shoulder, right? However, because the other party's aura was too unusual, even if there was no killing intent, malice, or hostility, Noah still stopped in his tracks, and his body dodged like a reflex launch. The person who was about to put his hand on Noah's shoulder missed. Oh. The other party didn't seem to have expected Noah to dodge all of a sudden, or rather, he didn't expect Noah to notice his approach and avoid his attack with extreme sensitivity. He revealed a surprised expression, but soon, that surprised expression turned into one of interest. Only then did Noah use the momentum of dodging to turn around and look behind him, taking in the full view of the person behind him. What he saw was a young man with blonde hair. He was about 20 years old, only 5 years older than Noah. The young man was carrying a long box on his shoulder. The shape of the box looked like it was used to hold a baseball bat or a bamboo sword. Intuition told Noah that the thing in the box could not be ignored. Driven by such intuition, Noah immediately stared at the box on one side of the young man's shoulder and did not move his gaze away. Did you notice it too? The young man's surprised expression appeared again, and it was much more intense than before, but in the next second, it turned into an even more interested expression. Like me, did you notice that sword on me too? Sword? The word stunned Noah for a moment. Sword? Could it be that the box on the young man's shoulder contained a sword? If that was the case, then Noah could be sure of it. First of all, the person in front of him was definitely not an ordinary person. Would an ordinary person carry a sword? Secondly, this world was definitely not as peaceful as it seemed. Otherwise, a random person with a sword would not have come to Noah like this. This made Noah frown slightly, and he looked straight at the young man with a bright smile. Who are you? Speaking of which, I haven't introduced myself yet, but that's too troublesome, you can just call me Tony. The young man said so. Your name? Forget it, that kind of thing is not important. For a moment, Noah really wanted to yell at the young man's face, that kind of thing is not important. But in the end, he resisted the urge. The young man in front of him was definitely not an ordinary person. Because an ordinary person would not say something so stupid. Since my name is not important, why are you looking for me? Noah glanced at Tony. Or are you just asking for directions? No, didn't I just say that I noticed your sword? Tony laughed, but there was no smile in his eyes, only a glint that made Noah's heart skip a beat. Although it's a little strange to say this, I'm a person who is obsessed with swords. I can feel that you have a sword that cannot be ignored, and my intuition tells me that a fight with you would be very interesting. The words of the young man in front of him were a little inexplicable, but Noah was still able to understand the last sentence he said. Noah couldn't help but smile, but there was no emotion in his smile at all. In other words, you're here to pick a fight, right? How about a fight with me? Ignoring Noah's words and Noah's dangerous expression, Tony spoke as if there was no one around. Although I don't feel the aura of my kind from you, this is the first time I've met someone who can make me excited in an instant. Obviously, even those great knights and holy knights who have practiced swordsmanship for dozens or even hundreds of years can't give me this kind of feeling. You, an ordinary person, can actually do it. This really makes me very interested. Not to mention, you also have the aura of a sword that is inconceivable enough to be on par with mine. Tony's lips curled up as he finished speaking. His expression was like that of a brave warrior who was about to enter the battlefield and immersed in the battle with the enemy. How about it? Do you want to have a fight with me? At this moment, all the sounds in the surroundings seemed to have left Noah and Tony. The two of them stared at each other with a gaze that could make ordinary people faint. Noah didn't know what a grand knight, holy knight, or my kind meant. However, Noah felt that the sword Tony was referring to wasn't an actual sword, but Noah's swordsmanship. Chapter 453. Andre, my friend, I think you should have a glass of beer and think about what I'm saying. There's no need to think about what you're saying. Anyway, it's going to lead to big trouble. Even if you tell me that you're getting married, I'll believe that you're not making a lifelong vow with your other half. Instead, you're going to fight another time, right? How? How is that possible? Before you say that, please look into my eyes. Don't look away. Perhaps Tony and Andre didn't notice that the pedestrians around them had more or less distanced themselves from them and were whispering to each other while pointing at them. Noah's interest in Tony vanished as he looked at the two men who seemed to be having a crosstalk. He turned to Andre as though he was discouraged. Noah sensed a familiar power from Andre. Mana. It's a powerful mana that's comparable to a luscious. It's been less than an hour since I came to this world. First, there's an unfathomable man who popped out of nowhere. Now, there's an existence that's comparable to a luscious. Could it be that this world is filled with such existences? Noah couldn't figure it out. Seeing that Tony and Andre weren't going to stop arguing, he gave up on getting any information from them. Instead of being entangled with these two inexplicable people, it was better to hurry up and leave, so as to avoid any unnecessary trouble. This thought formed in Noah's mind. This meant that if he continued to stay with them, it would definitely lead to trouble. Noah instinctively felt that he had to leave. At that moment, Noah turned around and began to run without hesitation. Hey! Wait! Tony, who was quarreling with Andre, noticed Noah running away. His eyes widened as he hurriedly chased after him. You haven't decided if you want to fight with me. What? You want to fight with an ordinary person? Andre's face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. I thought that you would only bring trouble to the people around you when you're causing trouble. At least, you wouldn't challenge them to a duel. Now, I know that I was wrong about you. Don't run, you idiot. Andre was on the verge of tears as he chased after Rode in exhaustion. The three men chased each other in a straight line. They were like cats on the crowded street, nimbly squeezing through the gaps in the sea of people. They whizzed through the crowd at a speed not inferior to an off-road bicycle at full speed. This scene shocked Andre, who was at the back of the group. Andre didn't doubt that Tony was capable of that. However, that young man was capable as well. Could it be that he's not an ordinary person, but a knight or a magician? Andre pondered. That's not right. How could the other party be just an ordinary knight or magician if he could make that idiot go through all this trouble? Could it be that he is also a king? Andre's expression immediately became interesting. Instead of saying that it was rosy, it was more accurate to say that it was deathly pale or deathly green. Not good. Let the two kings fight here. We're in big trouble. Andre finally got serious, mana slowly gushing out of his body. At this time, Andre was using a power called magic. It was unknown what kind of magic he used to enhance his speed, but Andre's speed suddenly increased. His figure flashed left and right like the wind as he passed through the crowd and chased after the two in front of him. Compared to Andre, Tony was anxious. Tony's outstanding eyesight prevented him from letting Noah out of his sight. Besides, Noah's astonishing speed and agility allowed him to pass through the crowd and enter the alley. How could Tony not be anxious? "I won't let you escape." "Oh, hi." With such a roar, Tony actually leaped higher than the sea of people and stepped on the head of the person in front of him without any hesitation as he leaped forward. In an instant, blood-curdling screams sounded one after another. Those were the screams of the people who were trampled to the ground by Tony's feet. It was apparent that Tony didn't have any skills to divert his strength. Or rather, he didn't even consider the people he stepped on. He only cared about his own goal. He laughed heartily as he leaped forward like a child crossing a river by stepping on a stone pier. Noah, who happened to turn around and saw this scene, almost jumped in fright. There's actually such an idiot in this world? Andre, who was running at the back, roared with grief and indignation when he saw Tony jumping forward by stepping on people's heads like a monkey and those who were lying on the ground screaming miserably under his feet, causing the entire street to be in chaos. "You idiot." This was simply a walking, humanoid troublemaker. When Noah realized this, he dashed into an alley like a madman. However, at this moment, Tony, who was stepping on the head of the wailing man, also jumped into the alley. Tony stomped on the walls on both sides of the alley. His body turned into a blur as he leaped over Noah's head and landed in front of him. "Haha. You can't escape." In response to Tony's maniacal laughter, Noah only replied with a single sentence. "Too naive." As soon as he finished speaking, Noah sped up. Tony, who had not yet landed on the ground, was stunned. Noah spun around and kicked Tony's lower abdomen fiercely. Bang! Amidst the muffled sound, Noah did not kick Tony's lower abdomen. Instead, it was the box that had fallen into Tony's hands and was held in front of his abdomen. Tony, who was holding the box and blocking Noah's kick, was sent flying backward by Noah's force. At the same time, an excited expression appeared on his face. "You're finally going to fight me?" As he spoke, Tony raised his eyes and looked ahead. He was immediately stunned. Noah was nowhere to be seen. Tony hurriedly raised his head and looked up. Just like Tony, Noah stepped on the left and right sides of the alley wall and leaped up agilely. Not long after, he jumped onto the roof of the nearby building and disappeared. Tony's expression changed at first, but then a sinister smile appeared on his face. That was a sign that his fighting spirit had been completely aroused. Interesting. Leaving these words behind, Tony also jumped up onto the roof and chased after him. At this moment, Andre finally caught up. He was just in time to see Tony jumping onto the roof of the building with a twisted expression on his face. "You just stepped on someone. Now you're stepping on someone else's roof. You trash should be arrested for trespassing." While shouting, Andre also used a magic spell called Leap. His body soared into the sky, and with a single leap, he landed on the roof of the building. If Tony heard Andre's words, he would cry out that he was wronged. Stepping on people was his fault, but jumping onto other people's roofs was Noah's idea. Whoosh! Amidst the whistling of the wind, Noah's figure flashed through the space. He jumped down from a building, jumped onto a magnificent building, and landed on the roof of the building. This was a cathedral on Sardinia. At this time, Noah was on the roof of such a large church. At the same time, a frivolous voice sounded in front of Noah. "It's time to give up running, right, friend?" The one who said this was Donnie, who had also landed on the roof of the church. I thought you would be tired after jumping and running for so long. I didn't expect you to not even pant. You're much stronger than those knights. Undoubtedly, you didn't use magic." Tony chuckled as he carried the box on his shoulder. "But then again, you are indeed worthy of having the same sword as me. If you want to wield a powerful sword, you also need a strong physique. It seems that you have a good understanding of this point. Are you praising yourself?" Noah looked at Tony, who was not panting at all. "Undoubtedly, aren't you the same?" "Yes. It's the same." Tony laughed happily. We really have a lot in common. Chapter 454. When André reached the roof of the cathedral, Tony was already holding the box in his hand. He opened the box and took out the sheathed sword. It was a standard knight's sword. The blade was more than 80 centimeters long. It had a double-edged blade and a thick and sturdy structure. However, it wasn't a powerful weapon. It wasn't a divine weapon or magic weapon. It was just an ordinary knight's sword that could be easily identified as a crude mass-produced weapon. Of course, the sword itself was rather ordinary, but the person holding it was definitely not ordinary. When Tony pulled out the sword from the scabbard and held it in his hand, Noah felt an inexplicable sense of danger. It was as if he was warning Noah not to let the other party have a sword in his hand, otherwise, something terrible would happen. Moreover, Tony didn't hold the sword in his hand. Instead, he lowered his hand as though he didn't have the strength to lift the sword. He didn't seem like he was going to attack or defend. He looked like a child holding a toy. Noah's expression gradually turned serious as he stared straight at Tony, who still had a sunny smile on his face, but his eyes had turned into a ferocious beast staring at its prey. After a while, Noah let out a sigh. It seems like you won't let me go if I don't fight with you. Don't say that. Isn't it a great thing for two people who have the same sword to fight each other? Tony's expression remained unchanged, but his eyes were terrifying. Other than my own kind and enemy, this is the first time I feel like I have to swing my sword at someone with all my might. So, please, don't disappoint me. Hearing Tony's words, André, who was frozen due to the vile atmosphere, finally reacted. His mouth gaped open in astonishment as he looked at Noah in a completely different way. Unlike Noah, André clearly understood the weight of the words kindred and enemies that Tony mentioned. He also understood the weight of Tony's words. Frankly speaking, with Tony's words, all the magicians in the world would know about Noah's existence by this time tomorrow. Noah would definitely be more famous than many knights and magicians who had the highest honor in the world. This was the significance of Tony's words. André thought that Tony was chasing after his own kind. However, he didn't know Noah at all and was certain that he wasn't Tony's own kind. Besides, Tony also said that Noah wasn't his own kind and enemy. So, was he just an ordinary knight or magician? If that was the case, then Noah was definitely an existence equivalent to those at the highest level in the entire world of magic to make Salbar Doni feel the need to wield his sword with all his might. André was on the same level as Tony. However, even André couldn't make Tony swing his sword at full strength. This was enough to prove the extent of Noah's power. André, who wanted to stop Tony at first, gave up. That was not only because he knew that Noah was not a simple person, but also because once Tony pulled out his sword, André would definitely be knocked down by Tony's sword if he wanted Tony to pull back his sword. Instead of standing in front of that idiot, I should think about how to clean up the mess. André said as if he had given up on himself. Then, using the magic of leap, he leaped away and landed on a building in the distance. He then took out his phone. All right, friend, it's your turn to draw your sword. Tony waved his empty hand calmly. Let me see your sword and sword. Sigh. Noah sighed impatiently. That's all I can do. Noah didn't think that he would have to fight someone whose strength he couldn't see through after coming to a new world. However, it was also a good opportunity to test the strength of the people in this world. Bang! Like an explosion, the flames in Noah's hand suddenly ignited and turned into a black knight's sword that fell into Noah's hand. Compared to Tony's sword that looked like it was mass-produced and could be forged by a normal person, Noah's knight's sword was as black gold. There were white lines on the sword with mysterious runes on it. It was obvious that it wasn't an ordinary sword. Oh. Tony raised an eyebrow. Is this your sword? There's no need to fight if I answer your question. You don't look like you have such thoughts, do you? Noah raised a knight's sword in his hand and pointed it at Tony. Since you want me to take out my sword, I'll accompany you this time. If you don't make me happy, I'll stab you with this thing you want to see. Ha 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 ha. Tony laughed heartily as a mountain-like pressure spread out from his body. That's right. That's how it should be. The moment the words left his mouth, Tony lifted his feet and slowly walked towards Noah. Like a run-up, he quickened his pace bit by bit. At a certain moment, he suddenly stomped his feet on the ground and shot forward. The knight's sword in his hand was aimed at Noah, slashing down furiously. Whang! Just as Tony slashed out with his sword, Noah's vision blurred. It was as if the sword had suddenly disappeared. He could only feel a sharp wind breaking chi in front of him, which made Noah's eyes narrow. Tony was indeed not an ordinary person. He didn't use magic or any other power. He just swung his sword. It was a pure physical attack, but it had the same effect as magic. His sword disappeared. It was not because of any magic, but because Tony had followed a perfect trajectory and slashed at Noah's blind spot, which should not have been possible from the front. However, with his excellent senses, Noah was still able to perceive the trajectory of the sword. Noah leaned his body slightly and quickly retreated. Swish! Tony's sword suddenly appeared and slashed at Noah's original position. Duh! After dodging Tony's outstanding strike, Noah immediately stepped forward and chopped down on Tony's head with the knight's sword in his right hand. Tony was not surprised by the energy coming from above his head. He raised his sword and slashed at the top of his head. Clang! The white knight's sword clashed with the black knight's sword, causing sparks to fly in all directions. The crisp sound of clashing resounded. Noah and Tony were both pushed back by each other's strength. However, they only took half a step back before they were able to stabilize themselves. Gently rubbing his palms on his sword, Tony let out a low roar in excitement. He stomped his feet on the ground and shot towards Noah. The sword in his hand trembled slightly. With a wave of his hand, a phantom appeared out of thin air like a mirage. The sword tip turned into a white shadow as Tony's sword stabbed towards Noah's neck from a tricky and vicious angle. There was no mercy at all. After the previous probing, Tony had already probed Noah's sword skill attainments. Therefore, there was no need to be merciful. Facing the sharp tip of the sword, Noah took a step back and raised the knight's sword in his hand to block in front of him. Swish! The cunning knight's sword tore through the air and pierced through the air like a bolt of lightning with a sharp sound. Clang! The pitch-black knight's sword appeared in front of the sharp tip of the sword as if it could predict the future, causing sparks to fly from the tip of the sword as it landed on the tip. Clang! 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 All of a sudden, the mirage-like swords landed on Noah's swords one after another. One attacked crazily while the other retreated conservatively. The two swords, one white and one black, clashed with each other. As Noah and Tony moved, sparks and crisp sounds filled the air with every clash. Sure enough. My feeling was right. Tony became more and more excited as the fight went on. Even those uncles who had been practicing swordsmanship for 30 years and call themselves knights were killed by my one strike. You can actually block so many of my strikes. I was not wrong. You have a very powerful sword. Let me see how powerful your sword is. Chapter 455. Clang. The crisp sounds of steel clashing against steel and the sparks that flew in all directions continuously reverberated through the roof of the great sage hall. The darkening space seemed to have been dyed bright as waves of red light flashed one after another. Chi! The tip of the sword that was pointed at the pitch-black knight's sword suddenly trembled slightly and swayed abruptly. It bypassed the knight's sword and shot towards Noah's neck. Looking at the sharp tip of the sword, Noah's figure retreated without hesitation. Amidst the clattering sounds, the tip of his feet constantly tapped on the ground. Every time he tapped on the ground, his body would fly back a certain distance in an extremely agile manner. Ha! Seeing Noah's sudden retreat, Tony let out a low roar and stomped his foot on the ground with a force much more violent than Noah's. Like a leaf in a gale, there seemed to be an invisible force pushing Tony out from behind. Tony quickly dashed towards Noah. Looking at Tony, who was hot on his heels, Noah narrowed his eyes. He seemed to have thought of something, and the corners of his mouth slowly rose. Tony, who clearly sensed the curled expression on Noah's face, instantly felt a warning in his heart. This caused Tony, who was shooting out, to suddenly stomp on the ground and forcefully stop his body in the most violent manner. However, stopping now would have given Noah too much time. Without warning, Noah suddenly leaped up and spun his body. Like a bullet that was about to be fired at Tony, his body was actually suspended in the air in the shape of the letter 1. Hum. A gorgeous vortex suddenly appeared under Noah's foot and covered the bottom of Noah's foot. Bang! With a loud explosion, the vortex under Noah's feet suddenly burst open, turning into an extremely ferocious thrust that propelled Noah's body forward like a bullet in the truest sense. Originally, the Great Leap technique was no longer of much help to Noah. Noah already had the idea of eliminating it. However, at this time, Noah didn't rely on the Great Leap to increase his speed. Instead, he relied on the Great Leap function that allowed Noah to use space as a stepping board. Sometimes, the effects of this ability would be extraordinary, and it was comparable to Andre's leap magic. Therefore, Noah chose to use the Great Leap as a surprise attack. Whoosh! Under Tony's shocked gaze, Noah, who was in mid-air, used the leap forward technique to shoot out like a bullet. He rotated the knight's sword in his hand for half a circle, and after he completely borrowed the force, he slammed it down on Tony with a fierce chi force. Is there such a way to fight? The ferocious energy coming from above made Tony yell, but he didn't dare to be careless at all. He turned the knight's sword in his hand and stirred up a faint whirlwind as if it was tearing the air apart. After a slight pause, with a piercing sound of wind breaking, he heavily tapped on the knight's sword that was coming at him. Ding! The loud sound of metal colliding rang out for a long time. Clang! Soon, another crisp sound of collision reverberated in the air. It was the sound of Noah's great leap strike on Tony's hastily raised knight's sword. Under such circumstances, coupled with the effect of the surprise attack, Tony more or less panicked and lost his balance from the heavy strike. Not good. Tony's expression changed as he tried to stabilize himself. Too slow. But Noah wouldn't let go of this opportunity. He spun his knight's sword and slammed it heavily on Tony's chest. Bang! A muffled sound suddenly rang out. Goo! Tony spat out a bitter groan. His body seemed to have been hit by a truck. The friction caused by the friction in the air caused him to fly backward and smash into the guardrail-like wall not far away. Bang! The powerful force caused Tony to smash through the wall, and he fell out of the roof of the great cathedral amidst the flying rubble, falling below the great cathedral. Shit! Noah came to his senses and cursed inwardly. I forgot to restrain my strength. The great cathedral wasn't small and its height naturally couldn't be underestimated. Although it was not comparable to a skyscraper, it was still possible for a human body to fall from. Unless Tony used magic or something like that, he would definitely be severely injured if he were to bear the impact with his physical body. No matter how strong his body was, he would definitely be severely injured. If his head fell down, Tony's fate would be tragic. Of course, Noah didn't think that Tony would fall to his death. Just as Noah was hesitating whether to go over and take a look, a hand suddenly reached out from below the smashed wall and placed on the ground. Then, a person climbed up from below. Wah, I thought I was dead for sure. With such a nonchalant cry, Tony climbed up in an extremely wretched manner like he was not a human at all. Seeing this extremely mundane scene, Noah fell into a state of speechlessness. Noah had imagined that Tony would use some kind of magic to suddenly fly up from below. He also thought that Tony would directly appear in front of him like teleportation. However, Noah really didn't expect that Tony would actually climb up. What should he say? Noah began to suspect that Tony was really hiding his strength. Under Noah's scrutinizing gaze, Tony patted the dust on his body and raised his head. He looked at Noah with the same sunny expression as before, but the look in his eyes had completely changed. He became impassioned. This was Tony's performance when he truly began to value Noah. I didn't think that I would lose in a duel of swords. Undoubtedly, even the hierarch can't do anything to me in this aspect. You're really satisfying. Tony's eyes met Noah's scrutinizing gaze. His expression more or less revealed the battle thirst of a pure warrior. What's your name? Although Tony had been pestering Noah to duel with him, he had never asked for Noah's name. The reason was simple. Back then, Noah hadn't shown that he was worthy enough for Tony to remember his name. But now, Tony was asking for his name. It was impossible for Noah not to understand what this meant. Noah Doria. You can call me Noah. Noah, huh? Tony muttered before nodding. Okay. I'll remember your name. Noah certainly didn't know how difficult it was for Tony to remember a person's name. To put it bluntly, there were no more than 10 people who could make Tony remember the name of their first meeting. And each of these 10 people was an existence that possessed unparalleled power in this world. I'll admit it. I lost in a duel of swords. Tony stared at Noah and said. But I can still use a sword that no one in this world can block. A sword that no one in this world can block? Noah's heart tightened. These words were definitely not just empty words. Originally, I didn't want to use such a sword because it can't be considered as my sword skill. It's just an opportunistic strength. But since I lost in a duel of swords, it would be rude if I don't show you my true strength. Tony lowered his hand that was holding the sword. I'll show you something special. My authority. When these words entered Noah's ears, Noah's heart let out an unprecedented cry. It was a sense of crisis. A real sense of crisis. Although he didn't know what Tony meant by authority, Noah believed him for no reason. It was definitely something very dangerous. Something so dangerous that it could take Noah's life. This made Noah's body tense up. His heart was in his mouth. At this moment, Tony suddenly opened his mouth and chanted an incantation. I hereby swear that I won't allow anything that I can't cut to exist. This sword can cut through everything on earth. It is an invincible blade. An unimaginable amount of power gushed out from Tony's body and turned into a fluorescent light that covered Tony's entire body. Chapter 456. I swear that I will not allow anything to exist that I cannot cut through. This sword can cut through everything on earth. It is an invincible blade. As the words left Tony's mouth like a proclamation, a vast power that caused the air to tremble rose from Tony's body. It was like a strong light that made Tony look like a god. Under such circumstances, Tony's sword-wielding hand began to change. Kacha kacha. Amidst the sound of ice, Tony's arm turned silver. It was the purest color of steel. Like the arm of an exquisite sculpture, Tony gripped the sword tightly with his silver hand, causing the sword to shine with a silver light. At that moment, Noah clearly felt it. He could feel the terrifying aura released from Tony's sword that was obviously a mass-produced weapon. It made Noah's heart palpitate. I can't block it. That sword can't block it. No. It should be said that if he chose to block the sword, then Noah was likely to be in danger. Without hesitation, Noah mobilized all the mana in his body. Amidst the vibrations in the space, terrifying mana gushed out of Noah's body like a tidal wave, turning into a white light that illuminated every corner of the place. The brilliant white light was all gathered on the knight's sword in Noah's hand, making the pitch-black knight's sword completely turn into a dazzling pure white in an instant, blooming with dazzling light. Whoa, what kind of curse is this? Tony was surprised for the first time. You're obviously not my kind, but you actually have such a strong curse power. If it wasn't for the fact that I didn't feel a strange aura from your body, I would have suspected that you're my kind. You've been talking about same kind, since the beginning. If you're referring to the issue of race, then I'm sorry, I'm just an ordinary human, not a monster like you who suddenly jumped out. Noah raised the knight's sword in his hand, his gaze was unprecedentedly solemn. Looks like this move should be able to determine the victor between us. Let me see what kind of power this so-called authority you speak of is. You don't know? Tony was startled at first, but then the corner of his mouth rose. If that's the case, then you'd better watch carefully. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying power that could rival a storm surged out with Tony at the center, sweeping out in all directions. It was mana. But in Tony's words, it was called curse in this world. Sensing the terrifyingly massive mana, Noah's heart was filled with astonishment. The mana rising from Tony's body was no weaker than Noah's. This was the first time Noah met someone who could match him in terms of mana. Are there really such terrifying people everywhere in this world? Are there so many of them that I've just arrived in this world? Noah gripped his sword tightly and took a deep breath. The magic power rising from his body became even more violent, and like Tony, it swept out like a storm. Tony's blood boiled as he gazed at the storm of mana around Noah's body that couldn't be affected by his own power. Then, here I come. Tony gripped the hilt of his sword with both hands and raised it above his head. His eyes were as bright and scorching as the sun as he stared at Noah with intense battle intent and arrogance. He suddenly smiled. In the next moment, Tony swung the sword down heavily. Clang! When Tony swung his knight's sword, which was wrapped in terrifying magic power, an invisible slash suddenly appeared and cut through the air. With a sharp sword hum, it flashed past like a half-moon shadow and fell on Noah. Whang! Wherever the invisible slash passed, the space violently trembled, as if it could collapse at any time, and violently fluctuated. Noah's sense of crisis exploded. Almost instinctively, Noah used all of his magic power to cast, crush, to cover the knight's sword, and raised it horizontally in front of him. With the full support of the superior grade destruction spell, Crush, even if Hades released an attack with all his strength, when it landed on Noah's knight's sword, it would explode in an instant, shattering without a trace. However, it was under such circumstances that Noah could not believe what happened. Clang! A slash that could not be seen with the naked eye cut through the air and landed on Noah's sword that was dyed pure white by the brilliant white light. Kacha! With a crisp breaking sound, the invisible slash cut through the brilliant white light covering the knight's sword. Then, it cut through the knight's sword, revealing its original black luster. Pa! From the middle of the sword that was born from Noah's soul, it was cut in half without any resistance. Then, without losing any momentum, the slash went through the broken knight's sword and landed on Noah's body amidst the vibrations in the air. Magician! Noah, whose pupils had shrunk to the size of a needle tip, let out a low bellow, releasing the other weapon in his soul. Bang! In the surging blue flames, the power called Magician released the other weapon in Noah's soul. When the blue flames dissipated, a thick black shield was already standing in front of Noah. Clang! The untraceable slash landed on the pitch-black heavy shield that the magician had transformed into, stirring up a violent gust of wind and blazing red sparks, causing the deafening sound of the collision to resound through the sky. However, this scene did not last long. Kacha! With a cracking sound, a crack appeared on the pitch-black heavy shield. Bang! Immediately after, the pitch-black heavy shield that the magician had transformed into was also cut in half. With a muffled explosion, the shield shattered into pieces, leaving a path for the knight's sword to escape. Clang! Andre, who was on the phone at the top of another building, suddenly saw a sword light flashing from the roof of the great cathedral. It fell down and swept across the entire great cathedral in a straight line. Kacha! The majestic great sage hall was neatly sliced apart by that sharp sword light. It was split into two halves, separating from each other and falling to the sides. Rumble! A loud sound that made the earth tremble was heard. The great cathedral, which had an extremely long history and scale, was turned into ruins and collapsed with a loud bang. Did it really become like this? Andre could not help but feel sad. Andre had already guessed this situation. After all, among the two people in the battle, one of them was the king that the whole world was afraid of. If this level of damage was enough to end the battle, then it was already not bad. Thinking like this, Andrei recomposed himself and used leap magic to jump in the direction of the collapsed great cathedral. At the same time, in the center of the ruined great cathedral, two people were facing each other. With a pa sound, Noah knelt on the ground with one knee and his breathing became somewhat rapid. Recalling the sword strike that could split the heavens and earth, Noah cast his gaze toward the other side with lingering fear. There, Tony was staring blankly at Noah and was extremely stunned. "You blocked it? My magic sword?" Hearing this, Noah did not have time to answer before a sudden sharp pain came from his head. Goo! The excessive pain made Noah hold his head and let out a muffled groan. It was not the pain caused by Tony's attack. It was the mental damage caused by the destruction of his soul. A total of 2 pieces of the blaze were destroyed, which made Noah's mind suffer a violent impact and his consciousness gradually faded away. Before losing consciousness, Noah heard Tony's laughter that represented joy and pleasure. "You actually blocked my authority. You are the opponent that the heavens have prepared for me. I have my eyes on you. Become stronger. Become strong enough to fight me with all your strength." Noah Dole. Chapter 457. When Noah regained consciousness, he heard a frivolous voice before he could open his eyes. "Oh. You're awake?" Noah shuddered when he heard the familiar voice. He quickly opened his eyes and took in everything before him. 2 people entered Noah's sight. "Yo." Tony, who was holding a cup of ice cream in his hand and eating while humming an unknown song, greeted Noah with a bright smile on his face. "Did you sleep well?" Tony greeted Noah very naturally, like greeting a roommate in the same dormitory. Others might think that Noah had a good relationship with Tony. As a result, Noah was in a trance for a second. "I'm really sorry, Sir Noah." Andrei, who was wearing a pair of glasses, sat beside Tony with an expressionless face. "Please allow me to introduce myself to you. I am Andrei Rivera, a trusted aide of Minister Salvador. You can just call me Andrei." Hearing this, Noah finally reacted and recalled what happened before he lost consciousness. Because the knight's sword and revolver were destroyed by Tony's so-called authority, Noah also suffered from the mental impact of his soul being destroyed and lost consciousness. Recalling this matter, Noah had the spare energy to observe his surroundings. What surprised Noah was that he wasn't on the ground, but in the sky. To be more precise, he was on a plane. Through the window, Noah saw that the sky had turned completely dark and found himself in a first-class cabin. There were only 3 people in the cabin: Noah, Tony, and Andrei. Undoubtedly, Noah was on the ground before he lost consciousness and woke up in the cabin. No matter how stupid he was, he could guess that Tony and Andrei brought him here. Noah was stunned. "What are you guys doing?" "I'm really sorry." Before Tony could say anything, Andrei calmly explained for Noah, as if he was afraid that he would cause even more trouble. "It's rude of us to bring you on the plane without your permission, but this is the order of the king. So, please forgive us, Sir Noah. We'll talk about that later." Noah frowned and shifted his gaze to Tony. "I want to know why you brought me on the plane." "Well, don't be so angry. You must be bored on that island. So, as your best friend, I helped you make the decision," Tony said proudly, but his next sentence exposed his true intention. "Besides, you're my opponent, how can I let you go?" Noah's mouth twitched when he heard that. He turned to look at Andrei. "Can I kill him with a single slash? Please forgive us." Andrei pushed up his glasses and said, "Although this troublesome, no, Minister Salbat Lay was indeed rude, that was only because of the king's recognition of you. Please take this honor into consideration, and at the very least, don't fight on the plane. I'd like to fight with you again." Tony's eyes suddenly became serious as he stared at Noah. "After all, you blocked my authority. I haven't met such an interesting opponent in a long time. You have to fight with me until the end." To be honest, I'm also very shocked. Andre raised his head. His reflective glasses made it impossible to see his expression, but the disbelief in his voice still showed. To be able to block that authority is something that even gods can't do. Sir, you accomplished this feat as a normal human. I believe that you will be famous all over the world. Can you guys wait? Noah's frown deepened. What is authority? And you just said God, right? Are you referring to the gods? After hearing his words, Tony and Andre exchanged a glance with each other. By the way, do you really not know anything? Tony asked curiously. Then do you know about the God Slayer? God Slayer? This title is really arrogant. Or, in this world, there are not only real gods, but also the so-called God Slayer? If that's the case, then this world is dangerous. No, I can't jump to conclusions. Let's ask first. To tell you the truth, I really don't know anything. Noah said bluntly. So, if you can explain it to me, I'll be very happy. You really don't know anything? Tony blinked. Seems like you're dumber than me. Endure. Before I get the information I want, I'll endure it and wait for the opportunity to kill this guy. Generally speaking, with your strength, it's impossible for you to not know anything. However, it's too insensible of you to ask about other people's privacy. Andre sized Noah up seriously and changed the topic of the conversation. In that case, if you don't mind, as an apology for bringing you on the plane without your permission, let me explain it to you. After saying that, Andre explained the background of this world to Noah. There was no doubt that this was a modern world. However, in this world, there were also various unknown organizations. It was a group of people who used miracles that had survived the grinding of a long history. In Europe, these groups were called magic societies. Of course, the miracles used by these so-called magic societies were magic. In other countries, there were also groups that used powers that existed before, such as China's martial arts and magic, Japan's yin-yang jutsu and curses, and so on. Andre was a knight who was born in Europe. The knights here were not the kind of warriors who only knew how to wield swords and spears, but they were individuals who practiced both swords and magic. In Europe's magic societies, many of those who practiced both swords and magic were called knights. Among the knights, a group of people who were particularly outstanding and powerful would be awarded the rank of the Grand Knight. However, above the Grand Knight, there was a rank called Paladin. That was the highest honor that a knight could obtain. Obtaining the rank of a paladin meant that this person was already at the top of the world. There were only 6 kings in the world that could suppress people who obtained the rank of a paladin. God Slayer. If the paladins were still in the category of human beings, then the God Slayer was a true monster. He was an inhuman existence that could trample countless paladins, the most glorious of human beings, under his feet. Perhaps some people would scoff at this title and think that it was nonsense. However, just as the name suggested, the so-called God Slayer referred to those who had slaughtered the gods and usurped the power of the gods. Authority. That was a power that only the gods could use. The humans who killed the gods would usurp this power from the gods and use it for themselves. Once they obtained the authority of the gods, this person was no longer a human, but a God Slayer, a real inhuman existence. Therefore, the God Slayer was called the Tyrant, also known as the Demon King, a true king above all humans. Tony was one of the God Slayers. In other words, not only did Noah encounter the only 6 God Slayers in the world in less than an hour after he arrived in this world, but the God Slayer also found fault with him. Not only did he fight with the God Slayer, but he also used the power of a human to block the power of a god. It was just that unbelievable. Noah silently looked at Tony, who was smiling at him, then shook his head at Andre. I won't doubt your words, but you said that this guy is a God Slayer. To be honest, I really want to refute that. I understand your feelings very well. Andre's voice was full of sincerity when he said this. It was obvious that he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Many people don't want to believe in this nightmare, but it is the truth. This idiot. No, Sarbaltlay is indeed a god slayer, there is no doubt about that. Isn't that too much? Tony protested, but he was ignored by Noah and Andre at the same time. That was all Noah asked with a frown on his face. Do gods really exist? Chapter 458. Noah could be considered to have been to many worlds. In these worlds, even if Noah hadn't seen them before, he had more or less heard of them. For example, in the world of fairy tale, there were dragons and demons. Although Noah had not seen them, Naz, Gadjalu, and Wendy were the children of dragons. Mira had also received the power of demons, which made Noah feel their existence. In the world of Magician's Night, it was needless to say. The fantasy species that only existed in fantasy were not much different from the gods. They were all existences that originally only existed in fantasy and myths. Noah even met two gods who called themselves his mother, Gaia and Aleia. These two existences were even more powerful than the so-called gods. Therefore, if he met the so-called gods in any world, Noah would not be surprised. Noah only wanted to know if such existences could really run all over the world and be eliminated by humans, giving birth to the 6 god slayers. That was why Noah asked such a question in a roundabout way. Do gods really exist? Or rather, do gods really exist in this world? Noah wanted to know the answer to this question. Perhaps Andre understood the meaning of Noah's words, but after thinking for a while, he shook his head. We don't know if they are the omnipotent gods that we imagine, but they were indeed born based on the myths that humans weaved. They are inexplicable existences that originally only existed in myths. A long, long time ago, God should have been able to freely roam the world. However, humans created myths and legends, so God could only exist according to the content of the myths and could not truly descend into this world, Andre explained. The only gods that can appear on earth are those who rebelled against the myths and went against the content of the myths, bringing disaster to the world and humans. We call them the God of Disobedience. I defeated the God of Disobedience and successfully usurped the power of the gods, obtained the authority, and became a God Slayer. Tony's tone was so relaxed that it was as if he was talking about killing a mosquito instead of killing a god. Well, although I didn't have that idea at first, when I came back to my senses, I had already become such a troublesome existence. The first time, I almost died, but later on, it was much smoother. Sarbather is indeed a king who killed a god. Andre seemed to be unable to bear Tony's words and said seriously. Although I don't know if they are omnipotent gods in the religious sense, it is a fact that the God of Disobedience will appear all over the world from time to time, and only the God Slayers, who also have the power of God, can fight against them. Therefore, the magic societies all around the world will respect the God Slayers. It is not only because they can protect humans from the gods, but also because humans can't resist them. Having said that, Andre sized up Noah again. Your Excellency Noah, now you know how shocking your achievements are, right? Aren't you exaggerating a little? Noah glanced at Tony without changing his expression. Indeed, Tony is very powerful, but I only blocked his sword. It's not worth the exaggeration, is it? It's not an exaggeration. Andre finally laughed bitterly. Do you know what the authority that Sarbather used when he fought you was? Upon hearing this, Noah could not help but be startled. In Europe, there is a wise parliament that specializes in collecting information on God Slayers. The wise parliament named Sarbather's Silver Hand of Rending. Andre hesitated for a moment and finally chose to reveal this piece of information that many people knew. That is the authority that Sarbather seized from the Celtic god king, Nuada. It is the power that allows Sarbather to gain the ability to cut through everything. Not only does it increase the attack range of Sarbather's slash, but it can also cut through everything. Not to mention fragile things like the human body, it can even cut through magic, the ground, and even the sea. Therefore, even most gods can't block Sarbather's slash head-on. That was why Sarbather called it, the sword that no one in this world can block. That was why Sarbathar could use the authority of the demon's sword to gain the power to fight against the gods. After understanding this, Noah was speechless, and at the same time, he smiled bitterly in his heart. Block Sarbathar's demon sword? But Noah did not block Sarbathar's slash at all. Tony's sword had cut Noah's crush, knight's sword, and a magician, which had been strengthened by hardening runes, into two halves. How could Noah block such a tyrannical sword? The reason Noah was able to remain unscathed under Sarbathar's slash was because he released Bo at the critical moment and let Bo take Sarbathar's demon sword in his place. After that, Bo was cut in half by Sarbathar's demon sword and returned to Noah's body. Of course, Bo did not have a fixed form, so physical attacks could not do any damage to Bo. He was also the nemesis of Sarbathar's demon sword. It was because Bo took Sarbathar's slash that Noah was able to remain unscathed. Therefore, it was not Noah who blocked Sarbathar's demon sword, but Bo's body that took the damage from Sarbathar's demon sword, preventing it from touching Noah's body. However, Noah now understood why Sarbathar's slash was so terrifying. Sarbathar's silver hand should be referring to Sarbathar's silver arm. Sarbathar's silver arm could not only increase the range of his attack, but it could also cut through everything. Even magic, the ground, and the sea could be cut in half. It was because of this that Sarbathar could not see Sarbathar's slash from such a long distance away. Sarbathar's knight's sword and magician were also cut in half by Sarbathar's crush and magician. If Bo was not there, Noah would be in danger. Alright, I understand how powerful the God-slayer is now. Noah looked at Sarbathar and said doubtfully. But even if I can block your demon sword, it doesn't mean that I can win, right? That's why I brought you here. Sarbathar's expression became more or less unpleasant. I even used my authority, but you suddenly fell. Undoubtedly, you did not receive any damage and the battle ended. It's really annoying. Speaking of which, why did you suddenly fall? Andre was also puzzled. Your Excellency has already blocked Sarbathar's slash. You can definitely continue the battle with Sarbathar, right? That's right, that's right. That's why that battle does not count. Sarbathar shouted like a child. Unless you fight with me again, I won't admit the outcome of that battle. You're a God-slayer, yet you still want to keep pestering a normal person like me? Noah was stunned. If you like to battle so much, you should go find those gods of disobedience. Only they can satisfy you, can't they? Those are just enemies, not opponents. Sarbathar smiled, but his eyes were extremely bright. I don't lack enemies, I only lack opponents. But you shouldn't be looking for me, right? Noah frowned. Even if I can block your slash, I'm just a normal person. Aren't there 5 other God-slayers in this world other than you? Can't you go find them and fight? But you have a sword that even I can only admit defeat, right? Sarbathar narrowed his eyes and stared at Noah. If I can't fight you with my full strength when we both have the same sword, that would be too boring. Fight you with your full strength? Noah was stunned for a moment and was speechless. So, you plan to fight me when we get off the plane? However, Sarbathar unexpectedly shook his head. We both have the same sword, but I still have my authority. If I fight you with my full strength, it would be like cheating. Even if I win, there's nothing to be happy about. Then why did you bring me here? Noah rolled his eyes. Why? Sarbathar suddenly smiled. Well, don't worry, I already have a plan. Noah and Andre immediately became alert. If they were led by the nose by this idiot, it would definitely cause some trouble in the end. Definitely. Chapter 459. After that, Noah found out from Andre that he hadn't been in a coma for long. He had only woken up about 2 hours later. Originally, if the blaze was destroyed, the user would have to sleep for at least a full day before waking up. Moreover, they would also fall into a state of fatigue, and so on. It would take at least 3 days or even a week before they could fully recover. However, Noah was different from the other blaze users. Noah's blaze was not a materialization of the soul, but a materialization of the weapon. It was an external weapon that transformed into a part of the user's soul. Therefore, even if Noah's blaze was destroyed, Noah would only receive a part of the mental impact. He would not be like the other blaze users, who would fall into a severe coma once the blaze was destroyed. Therefore, Noah only used a short 2 hours to recover. Other than that, there were no other side effects. If it wasn't for the fact that Tony's magic sword had destroyed 2 of his blaze fangs, Noah wouldn't have fainted. However, this battle with Tony gave Noah a reminder. Noah's blaze was indeed a very useful and powerful weapon. However, at the same time, by exposing a part of his soul to the enemy's attack range, Noah had exposed his weakness. In the past, Noah had always thought that with the blaze's hardness and the hardening runes, the blaze would not be so easily destroyed. But now, it seemed that there was always someone better than him. In this world, there were also people like Tony who possessed such terrifying strength. Therefore, he had to be more careful when using the blaze. Otherwise, once the blaze was destroyed, even if Noah did not lose, he would still be injured. It would be very disadvantageous for him in battle. The battle with Tony proved this point. If not for the blaze being destroyed and causing Noah to fall into a coma, then Noah would have been able to continue the battle. In the end, whether or not he would have lost to Tony was another matter. However, Noah had to admit that Tony, the God Slayer, was indeed very strong. In terms of overall strength, he should be above Noah. In addition, Andre had intentionally or unintentionally revealed that Tony did not only have the silver hand, but also had other powers. Presumably, Tony's strength had reached a level that Noah could not imagine for the time being. Just thinking about how he had met such a terrifying person when he had just arrived in this world gave Noah a headache. Fortunately, there were less than 6 people like Tony in the world. Otherwise, Noah would really have to consider whether he should be a little more restrained in this world and search for the world fragment, while trembling in fear. Just like this, with Andre explaining the structure and background of this world and Tony's yawns, Noah's group finally arrived at their destination after dawn. Rome Fiumicino Airport, the international airport of the Italian capital. Under Andre's lead, Noah and Tony both yawned as they walked out of the airport. Noah looked tired and yawned repeatedly because he had spent the whole night trying to get more information about this world from Andre. He hadn't slept all night, so he looked tired and yawned continuously. Tony, on the other hand, just wanted to sleep in. However, when Andre saw this scene, he felt that Noah and Tony were unexpectedly harmonious. Rome? After yawning, Noah glanced at Tony. It's time for you to tell me why you brought me here, right? Well, don't be so anxious. Perhaps it was because Noah mentioned something important. Tony's spirit was lifted, and he asked Andre with a rare serious expression. The people should have gathered, right? Since you're the one who gave the order, they naturally won't disobey. But no matter what, there's only one night. There's no way they can make it here in time, right? Andre pushed up his glasses and looked at Tony with a bitter expression. If you allow, let me ask, why did you ask all the magic associations in Italy to gather here in the capital? All the magic associations in Italy to gather in Rome? Hearing this sentence, Noah was stunned. Noah did not doubt that Tony had the power to gather all the magic associations in Italy. After all, Tony was not only a king who killed gods, but he was also the King of Swords, who ruled the magic associations in Italy and was respected as the leader of the local magicians. Although he was the leader, Tony basically ruled over all the magic associations under his rule without ruling. This was not surprising because Tony himself was not a leader at all. If he really managed all the magic associations in Italy, the world would have been in chaos. It was precisely because of this that Andre was able to accompany Tony and play the role of alliance leader for Tony. As an old friend of Tony before he became the God Slayer, Andre was not only Tony's confidant but also had the title of Deacon Wang. He was one of the few people who could criticize Tony directly. It could be said that without Andre, Tony could only be regarded as a warrior and did not have the function of being the leader of the magic circle in Italy. According to Andre, he was usually responsible for the statistics of all the problems related to gods in Italy and was responsible for the work of letting Tony solve these problems. Tony also felt that these things were too troublesome, so he threw them all to Andre and was satisfied with just being responsible for fighting. But now, Tony had taken the initiative to exercise his authority as the leader of the alliance. Suspicious. It was too suspicious. Not to mention Andre, even Noah was vigilant and looked at the smiling humanoid troublemaker in front of him. Since you have something to do, then I won't bother you. Let's part ways here, bye-bye. Leaving this sentence, Noah was just about to run away when Tony tightly grabbed his shoulder. Don't be so cold. It's rare to come to the capital of Italy and see the gathering of all the magic associations in Italy. As your best friend, how can I not take you to see it? Tony smiled very brightly. In short, you come with me. Rare? Undoubtedly, it was you who kidnapped me. You call it rare? Even those magic associations were gathered by you. Is that rare? Noah was getting more and more ominous premonition, which made him extremely resistant. Besides, I'm not your confidant, nor will I be your best friend. There's no need for me to go to that kind of event. Let go of me. After saying that, Noah struggled to get up, but Tony held him tightly. How troublesome. In that case, I can only drag you over by force. Thus, Noah and Tony got into a scuffle outside the airport, leaving the corner of Andre's mouth twitching. Perhaps the two of them might actually get along. In the end, Noah was dragged away by Tony's persistent pestering. All the magic associations in Italy would gather in the largest hotel in Rome. Noah, Tony, and Andre arrived at the hotel together. Under the guidance of the waitress who didn't look like an ordinary person, they took the elevator to the top floor and arrived at an extremely spacious room. Tony's summoning order was issued just before boarding the plane. In other words, only one night had passed since the summoning order was issued. Naturally, it was impossible to gather all the magic associations in Italy in one night. So, until now, only one person in charge of the magic association had arrived at the hotel. The room that Noah and the rest arrived at was the room where the person from the magic association stayed. According to Andre, the other party seemed to have just fallen asleep last night, but got up because of Tony's summoning order and rushed to the hotel overnight. Perhaps it wasn't just the people from this magic association, but all the people in charge of the magic associations in Italy. They rushed over last night but hadn't arrived yet. What an irresponsible king. With Andre pushing the door open, two figures soon appeared in front of Noah. Chapter 460. In that extremely luxurious suite, at this moment, a man and a woman were sitting on the sofa respectively, seemingly chatting. The man was about 40 years old. He wasn't burly, but he was abnormally tall and straight. He had a well-sculpted face and an intellectual temperament. He looked like an iron general who had been on the battlefield for a long time and had undergone extremely strict training. He gave off a mellow, elegant, and dignified feeling of vicissitudes. A young lady sat opposite the dignified middle-aged man. She looked about 15 or 16 years old and was slightly over 160 centimeters tall. She had waist-length golden hair and an exquisite face that made one wonder if it was specially crafted by a famous craftsman. That wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that this petite young lady exuded a noble and confident temperament. Her delicate face was also filled with the dignity and confidence of a queen. The instant Noah saw this young lady, he felt as though he saw Lilith. Both of them shared an unusual similarity in terms of appearance and temperament. Logically speaking, compared to a 40-year-old middle-aged man, an average male would definitely be attracted to such a temperamental young lady when entering such a room. However, apart from Noah, who paid a little attention to this young lady due to her resemblance to Lilith, both Tony and Andre shifted their attention to the middle-aged man. Long time no see, Mr. Salbar. The middle-aged man stood up and bowed to Tony before greeting Andre. Long time no see, Mr. Andre. Long time no see, Mr. Salbar, Mr. Andre. The golden-haired girl also stood up. Instead of saying that she was confident, it would be more appropriate to say that she was gorgeous. However, her smile was extremely aggressive, just like that of a female lion. It's a pleasure to see both of you as healthy as before. Long time no see. Andre returned the greeting politely. Oh, I was wondering who arrived first. So it's the two of you. Compared to Andre, Tony's greeting was as straightforward as if he was greeting an acquaintance. However, don't think that Tony is being polite. Ugh. Tony scratched his head at the golden-haired young lady. You're that Browntree? Erica Browntree. The girl named Erica smiled elegantly at Tony as if she was not surprised in the slightest. You should remember my name by now, right? Sorry, my memory isn't too good, which is why I can't remember any of those troublesome magic tricks. Only this thing works better. Tony patted the box on his shoulder and chuckled. Of course, no matter how bad my memory is, I'll remember the names of people I've met 5 times. I've only met you 3 times, right? We've met 7 times, my monarch. The gorgeous smile on Erica's face finally disappeared, but her confident expression remained. No matter what, I, Erica Browntree, am happy to see you as healthy as before. Hearing this, everyone, including Noah, except Tony, had the same thought in their minds. Erica Browntree was probably lying, right? After all, the God Slayer was an existence that could be called the Demon King. Although he could protect humans from the hands of God, at the same time, because of his overly powerful strength, he could cause all kinds of problems and cause trouble for humans. For example, Tony, who was an empty-headed guy, wouldn't mind stirring up the whole of Italy as long as he had a battle that satisfied him. He was a real troublemaker. Therefore, everyone could tell that Erica Browntree's words were insincere. Let me introduce them to everyone. Andre stepped forward to let Noah enter the field of vision of everyone present as if he wanted to change the topic. This is Paolo Browntree, the general of the Magic Club, Red Copper Black Cross in Milan. Andre introduced the middle-aged man to Noah before introducing Erica. This is Erica Brantley, also a member of the Red Bronze Black Cross. Generalissimo Paolo is Miss Erica's uncle, and Miss Erica herself is a genius child who has obtained the rank of the Grand Knight. There is only one other person in Italy who has obtained the same honor at her age. Oh. Noah raised his eyebrows and looked at Erica. Under Noah's gaze, Erica wasn't moved by Andre's evaluation at all. Instead, she smiled brilliantly as if it was a matter of course. Andre, you don't have to say that. The achievements of me, Erica Browntree, are known to all of Italy. No, the whole world. There's no need to say anything. Hearing that, Noah couldn't help but laugh. Erica immediately frowned and looked at Noah with a slightly unhappy look. Sir, are you making fun of me? You misunderstood. Noah shrugged. It's just that your appearance, temperament, and tone are all very similar to a friend of mine, so I couldn't help but laugh. I'm sorry. That's right. Although they couldn't be said to be carved from the same mold, Lilith and Erica were both confident and gorgeous. Even their appearances were very similar, with both blonde hair reaching their waists. Looking at Erica, Noah felt as if he were looking at Lilith, which was why he chuckled. I see. Erica, on the other hand, combed her long hair with relief. To be able to be mentioned in the same breath as me, Erica Browntree, your friend must also be a gorgeous lady, right? Well, rather than a lady, it's better to call her a young lady, right? Recalling Lilith's willfulness and confidence, the corners of Noah's mouth slowly curled up. In this regard, Miss Erica is exactly the same as my friend. Is that so? Erica narrowed her eyes, and the gorgeous smile on her face began to transition to a somewhat dangerous level. But I'm not a young lady who only knows how to embroider in her room. Sir, why don't you try my sword and magic a little? With that said, traces of spell power began to rise from Erica's body with a confident and elegant smile. In this world, the power used to perform miracles, such as the aura of the East, the magic power of the West, and the spiritual power of the East, were collectively known as spell power. It was due to this that in the previous battle, Tony sincerely said to Noah that his spell power was really strong. In other words, Noah's magic power was also known as spell power, which was the general name of the world. Noah didn't expect Erica to have such a strong desire to show off. His gaze toward her became thought-provoking. She really is similar in all aspects, Erica. Paul reprimanded. Don't be rude. Uncle, you're wrong. Erica suddenly smiled. For us knights, exchanging swords is also a kind of etiquette. Since this sir can accompany Sarbar like Andre, it seems that he is also a capable person who is no weaker than a grand knight. Let me give him the opportunity to dance with me. That's something that others can't even ask for. Andre and Paul looked at each other in dismay. This Erica was no longer confident but arrogant, wasn't she? But this arrogance is not disgusting at all. Sure enough, this girl is carved from the same mold as Lilith. Miss Erica, you'd better leave this opportunity for others. Noah pretended to raise his hands in surrender and took the opportunity to speak. I'm just a passerby. You can talk about business. I'll take my leave. With that, Noah turned around, and Tony's face immediately appeared in front of him, giving Noah a fright. My dear friend, stay with me for a while longer. It'll be over soon. Tony grabbed Noah's shoulder with a smile. While Noah looked sullen, he turned his head and looked at Paul. Are you the only ones here? The other magic societies are still on their way. Paul laughed dryly. The order was just issued last night. It's a bit late. How troublesome. Forget it, I won't wait anymore. You can tell them when they come. Tony made such a declaration. I want news of God. The sooner, the better. Chapter 461. I want news of the gods. The sooner the better. When this sentence came out of Tony's mouth and entered the ears of Noah, Andre, Paul, and Erica, almost everyone had the same thought. This King of Swords must be itching to cause trouble again. This is going to be a little difficult. Paul had a troubled look on his face. Sarbatli, I should also understand that although the gods have left a lot of traces in this world, the god of disobedience can't appear at will. Could it be that Sarbatli has a way to summon the god of disobedience yourself? If there was such a way, it would be easy. I wouldn't be here. Tony waved his hand very casually. Anyway, you all go and collect news of the gods. If there is any, tell me immediately. Also, I don't want the kind of gods that are so weak that they can't even take one sword strike from me. They must be the kind of the god of disobedience, that is at the level of the god king or main god. There were strong and weak gods. According to Andre, the strength of the gods was not determined by their strength or popularity in mythology, but whether they had a strong sense of self. Therefore, the god of disobedience that appeared on the ground also had strong and weak gods. The powerful god of disobedience could easily sink a small island and bring about disasters like natural disasters. For example, once one of those famous sun gods appeared, the whole earth would be in high temperature just by appearing. The god king and main god level gods that Tony mentioned were such existences, which could be said to be the highest level of gods. Some of the weak god of disobedience couldn't even take one sword strike from Tony. But that was only relative to the kings who killed gods. In the face of such gods, humans were not without the ability to resist, but they were absolutely unable to confront them head-on. At most, they could only seal them. It was because of this that god slayers were not so easy to be born. It was a miracle that could not be achieved by the power of humans themselves, and even the most advanced magicians could not do it. To be able to become a god slayer was all based on luck. Moreover, it wasn't the ordinary kind of luck. It had to be the kind of luck that triggered 3 or 4 miracles under very, very rare circumstances. In other words, wanting to become a god slayer was no less than a beggar wanting to become an emperor who ruled the world. No matter what, gods and god-slaying kings were not welcomed. Such an existence that possessed a power that humans absolutely could not resist brought unimaginable fear and chaos to people. Just like now, Doni proposed that they must find the whereabouts of God. Even if Paolo was the commander of the Magic Society, Red Copper Black Cross, which had the ability to rank among the top in Italy, he still couldn't resist. Most importantly, such an irresistible existence was now asking people to find another even more irresistible existence. It was imaginable how difficult and helpless Paul was. I don't think you should be anxious about this kind of thing. Even Erica showed some distress and said, since ancient times, the most abundant thing is the appearance of the god of disobedience. I remember that you have become a god slayer for less than 5 years, but you still killed 4 god of disobedience in these 5 years. So, please wait patiently. There will always be a chance to satisfy you in the future. Here, as a king, you should be more understanding to the person who gives advice. Even Andre was half advising and half warning. Please listen to Miss Erica's request and show your tolerance, King. What a joke. If it was not necessary, who would want to let the god of disobedience fight with the god of disobedience? That would definitely bring trouble to the people around in the form of disasters. So, no matter what, Erica and others had to be perfunctory. I know these things. Doni frowned. Do I look like someone who likes to cause trouble? As soon as this sentence came out, Erica, Paul, and Andre looked at Doni speechlessly. Their stares made Doni feel guilty. This time, I really don't want to mess around. Doni quickly argued. As you said, the god will appear sooner or later, and by then, this god will still need to be dealt with. In that case, isn't it the same for you to take the initiative to collect information? Upon hearing that, Erica, Paul, and Andre exchanged glances. They had to admit that Tony's words made sense. I understand. Paul hesitated for a while and finally nodded. You're right. If the god of disobedience appears, we still need to deal with it. Only the king can fight against the god, so it's not strange for us to collect information for you. As long as you don't mess around. Erica said bluntly. I'm just afraid that you can't wait and really do something to make the god of disobedience appear. Doni was taken aback and muttered to himself. Seeing this scene, Erica, Paul, Andre, and the others felt a chill in their hearts. Noah, who had been watching from the sidelines, could only express his understanding of the three's reaction. After all, this Doni seemed like he was really considering whether to take the initiative to lure out the god of disobedience, wasn't it? Andre, Tony's trusted aide, who acted as a supervisor to prevent Doni from messing around, was about to say something when Doni spoke first. All in all, it's right for you to collect information on the god. When those who are late arrive, let them collect as well. Until then, I'll be waiting here. Hearing this, everyone was surprised. Wait? The King of Swords who could stir up chaos in Italy for the sake of battle was actually willing to wait? You didn't come here for this purpose, did you? Is it necessary to do this? Noah couldn't help but ask. Mr. Paul also said that only the God Slayer can deal with the god. When the god of disobedience appears, they will definitely report it to you. Why are you in a hurry to collect information on the god? Isn't that obvious? Doni replied without hesitation. Of course it's for you. As soon as these words came out, everyone was startled. For me? Noah looked at Doni in astonishment. Why? Do you still need to ask? Doni said with a smile. This god is not for me, but for you. Everyone suddenly fell silent. Ahem. Andre coughed, pushed his glasses, and pretended to be calm as he asked. If I understand correctly, Salbole, you want His Excellency Noah to slay the god? Paul and Erica also cast their gazes on Doni with absurd emotions in their eyes. Sigh. Noah sighed and said to Doni tiredly. Just tell me what you're thinking. My friend, didn't I say before that I only wanted to fight with you with all my might? Doni said matter-of-factly. But my authority is a bit of a cheat. It's not fair to you at all. So? Noah had a guess in his heart that made him speechless. You brought me here because you want me to kill a god and become a god slayer like you. This way, the conditions between us will be equal, and you will be able to do your best, right? Oh. 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 Doni cried happily. You're indeed my best friend. You really know me. Doni's so-called plan was finally exposed. He actually wanted to train a god slayer with his own hands. How preposterous. Noah, who had fallen silent, suddenly turned around and punched Doni's abdomen heavily. Bang! Doni, who did not expect Noah to suddenly attack, was hit squarely by the punch. His eyes bulged, and he squatted down while clutching his abdomen. This time, not to mention Paul and Andre, even Erica opened her mouth in shock and looked at Noah in disbelief. He had actually punched a god-slaying monarch? Sorry, I couldn't help it, Noah said expressionlessly, turned around, and walked out of the room without hesitation. Wait. Wait. My best friend. Doni clutched his abdomen and chased after Shiyen with a twisted face. In the vast and luxurious room, only Erica, Paul, and Andre were left looking at each other. Their eyes were constantly communicating, and they could not speak for a long time. However, each of them had the same thought in their mind. This time, there would be a lot of trouble because of that idiot. As long as there is news of God, you can go to the battlefield to kill the enemy and become one of my kind. Tony was getting more and more excited. At that time, we will fight each other with power against power, sword against sword. Wouldn't that be wonderful? I say, you should let me go now, right? Noah felt that he might really cry, and his tone was extremely weak. Let's not talk about beautiful or not. Tony, do you really believe that I can kill God? Was God so easy to kill? If so, there would be more than 6 god slayers in the world. At least, Noah was not as optimistic as Tony. He really thought that he could kill God. If you want to kill God, you can't just have power. From Andre, Noah also learned about the current situation of the 6 god slayers. According to Andre, apart from 2 to 3 people, almost half of the god slayers were just ordinary people before they became god slayers. It was said that before Tony became a god slayer, he only knew how to use a sword and nothing else. Not only did he not know magic, but Tony's body could not even store curses. Killing God depended entirely on luck and miracles. Otherwise, he would have been able to seal the weakest god and not kill him. To be honest, Noah did not think that he was weaker than the weakest god, but defeating and killing were 2 completely different concepts. Therefore, even if Noah was confident in his own strength, he did not dare to say that he could definitely kill God. Compared to Noah, Tony was obviously more confident. Tony squinted his bright eyes and met Noah's gaze. What appeared in his eyes wasn't trust or suspicion. Instead, it was excitement, as though he had met his match. I believe that you will become one of my kind. Hearing this, Noah frowned. What makes you say that? Who knows? Tony shrugged irresponsibly. At the very least, I don't feel that you can't do it. My intuition tells me that you can do it. Noah fell silent at Tony's words. Although Noah did not know whether Tony was joking or not, to be honest, he did not feel that he could not do it. Noah's intuition was very accurate. Since Noah himself did not feel that he could not do it, then it was most likely that he could do it. I'm afraid that Tony also has amazing intuition, right? Noah did not know whether it was Tony's own talent or a talent he gained after becoming a god slayer. However, since Tony had said so, only he knew whether it was ridiculous or not. In fact, Noah was not uninterested in meeting the so-called gods of this world. After coming to this world, Noah not only needed to find a world fragment, he also needed to find a way to strengthen himself. The person who slays a god can seize the divine power of the god he slays and become a god slayer. Without a doubt, if Noah could succeed in slaying a god, then he would obtain the power called authority and become a god slayer. Noah's strength would definitely increase by several folds. As long as Hades was as strong as Tony, he wouldn't have to be afraid of him anymore. Tony did not know if he saw Noah's wavering heart, but he laughed in a relaxed manner. I know, Noah. If you hadn't fainted that day, you would have been able to bring out an even more shocking power. Tony stretched out his hand and grasped his sword in his hand, truly demonstrating the state of a man and sword are inseparable. Even so, I don't feel like I'll lose to you. If that's the case, then I won't lose. After all, other than the authority of the demonic sword, I still have 3 other authorities that I haven't used yet. Tony said in an intoxicated tone as he gently stroked the blade of his sword. If that's the case, then you won't be able to satisfy me. You have to become stronger, or even become one of my kind. As soon as he finished speaking, Tony pointed his sword at Noah, causing Noah to feel a chill in his heart. Anyone who can become a god slayer is destined to become an excellent warrior, and I believe that you are an excellent warrior. Tony's lips curled into a sinister arc. So, my friend, do you really not have the slightest thought of seeking revenge from me? Noah sighed under Tony's piercing gaze. No. How could that be possible? Although the battle with Tony wasn't a battle to the death, Noah had to use all of his skills to barely block Tony's sword. Ever since he learned magic, Noah had never lost so miserably. Under such circumstances, even Noah wouldn't believe that he didn't want to take revenge. If possible, Noah really wanted to fight with Tony again. Fight with all his strength. Then, defeat Tony. But as Tony said, with Noah's current strength, it was impossible for him to win. Apart from the authority of the demonic sword, Tony still had 3 other authorities that he hadn't used yet. The gap between Noah and Tony was too big. At least, it wasn't just big. If he wanted to defeat Tony, there was only one way. God Slayer. Usurp the authority of a god and become a god slayer. This way, Noah would have a chance to defeat Tony. At this moment, Noah bitterly smiled. You won, Tony smiled from the bottom of his heart. It was a blessing for his kind that was about to be born. Chapter 463. Just like that, 3 days passed. On the way back to his room, Noah touched his arm while frowning and hissing in pain. If one were to look closely, they would notice that there was a tear on Noah's arm. Blood was still dripping from it, but there was no wound. No, it should be said that the original wound had already healed under Noah's regenerative ability that was strengthened countless times by the protozoan virus. All that was left were the cracks in his clothes, traces of blood, and some residual pain on his body. Of course, if it was just an ordinary injury, the degree of a cut on the arm would not be enough to make Noah show pain. The reason why he was still like this was mainly because the sword that cut Noah was not an ordinary sword. Noah gritted his teeth when he recalled the scene of Tony using the lacerating silver hand, with a cheerful expression and swinging the sword at him with a sunny smile on his face. That hateful guy. Once he enters battle mode, he can't hold back at all. He doesn't know how to hold back at all. 3 days ago, under Tony's persuasion, Noah finally decided to slay a god. Since he had decided to fight against a terrifying opponent who could rival Tony, Noah naturally had to make more preparations. Instead of saying that it was preparation, in fact, Noah just asked Tony to order a gymnasium around the hotel to be reserved, and then asked Tony to accompany him for training. Noah did this not because he wanted to make a last-minute effort, but because he wanted to get used to fighting against opponents of the level of the God Slayer and the God of Disobedience. When a person stayed in a dark place for a long time, their eyes would gradually adapt to the darkness. When a person stayed in a warm place for a long time, their body would gradually adapt to the high temperature. It was the same principle. If Noah were to fight against a high-level opponent like Tony, he would be able to adapt to the battle rhythm of the God Slayer and the God of Disobedience. Thus, he would be able to better display his strength. As it turned out, this method was indeed effective. The long-distance slash that Tony used with the demon sword's authority could not be blocked, nor could it be seen with the naked eye. Although Noah's senses could detect Tony's long-range slash, Tony's slash was too fast. Even if he could detect it, Noah's body would not be able to keep up. This was also the reason why Noah had no choice but to block Tony's demon sword, even though he knew it would be terrible if he chose to block it. Instead, he relied on Bio to withstand Tony's demon sword. And now, after 3 days of training with Tony, Noah was gradually able to adapt to the speed of Tony's demonic sword and dodge it. But even so, accidents still happen sometimes. Noah's arm was injured because he was a little slow to react in the gymnasium just now. As a result, he was grazed by Tony's magic sword. With that, Noah's arm was split open with a large wound. An unstoppable demonic sword was not just for show. It seems that in addition to increasing the attack range and non-stop attacks, Tony's demonic sword can also make injuries more difficult to heal and aggravate the pain. Noah nodded as he wiped the blood off his arm. There are strong and weak gods, and naturally, there are strong and weak authority. Tony's demonic sword, authority, is one of the best among all the god slayers and the god of disobedience. If I can adapt to that kind of slash, I'll have a better chance against the god of disobedience. I just don't know what kind of god Tony will find. Noah shook his head helplessly. I hope it's not the kind of god of disobedience that has troublesome authority. At this moment, a voice sounded behind Noah. Ah, isn't this Lord Noah? It was not so much a sweet voice, but rather a voice that purposely emphasized elegance and confidence. The moment he heard this voice, Noah knew who it was. He turned his head and looked behind him. What entered his sight was the person Noah had expected. She had long golden hair that reached her waist like a crown. She was a little short in height, but her figure was extremely large. Like a noble lady, she was walking out of the elevator. Her walking posture was very proper and majestic, attracting the attention of the people around her all the time. The Grand Knight of the Red Copper Black Cross, Erica Brantery. Beside this girl who had always emphasized her elegance was another girl. It was a girl who reminded people of a fairy. Her appearance was delicate and proper, but her expression was extremely tense. She gave people a feeling of cuteness and majesty at the same time. The girl tied her long silver hair into a ponytail and let it hang behind her. As she walked, it swayed like a tail. Together with Erica, she gradually approached Noah. Looking at this unfamiliar girl, Noah stopped walking and allowed Erica and the silver-haired fairy girl to walk in front of him. However, as soon as she arrived in front of Noah, the silver-haired girl clearly sized up Noah with a scrutinizing gaze. After a while, she suddenly opened her mouth. After a while, she suddenly said, "Are you Lord Noah Dole?" The girl's tone was the kind that would make people feel that she was too rigid and stern. Noah often encountered such a tone from people like Alusha and Orange Bar, so he nodded with ease. "You are?" "Excuse me. As a knight, I should first report my name." The silver-haired girl clenched her right fist and placed it in front of her left chest. She bowed slightly to Noah and saluted. "Greetings from the Red Copper Black Cross, Liliana Kranikar." Liliana Kranikar? Noah seemed to have heard this name from somewhere. I remember, it seems to be related to a genius child who obtained the glory of a grand knight before she reached adulthood, just like me, Erica Brantley. Without giving Noah a chance to recall, Erica laughed out loud. "In the whole of Italy, the only person of the same age who can make me, Erica Brantley, acknowledge is Liliana. Don't forget it." Hearing Erica's words, Noah remembered. In the past few days, Noah also learned a lot about the European magic world from Andre and Paul. Among them, Erica and Liliana were the focus of attention. As for why, the reason was very simple. This was because both Erica and Liliana were not yet 16 years old, but they had both obtained the rank of Grand Knight, which could only be obtained by the most outstanding elites among the knights. There were only 2 people in the whole of Italy who could achieve this at this age. Erica Brantley. Liliana Kranikar. Only these two girls. I'm really surprised, Noah couldn't help but say. You two are actually together? Noah heard that the two magic associations, Red Bronze Black Cross and Red Bronze Black Cross, seemed to be in a hostile relationship. He didn't expect that the treasures of the two magic associations would actually be together. Liliana is my acknowledged competitor, how can I let her appear out of my sight? Erica spread out her hands and revealed an inside story. Not to mention, Liliana is my childhood sweetheart. Don't call me that intimately, you vixen. Liliana couldn't help but burst out swearing. I don't have such a good relationship with you, it's just an ill-fated relationship. Saying such a sentence, Liliana deliberately coughed to make herself serious and looked at Noah. I just want to see what kind of man is rumored to be able to withstand the magic sword of Salba Leching. Hearing this, Noah was speechless. He didn't know when it started, but the story of Noah withstanding Tony's magic sword completely spread in the past 3 days. This also led to the heads of various magic associations from all over Italy looking at Noah with amazement, surprise, horror, and sometimes even horror. Not many people dared to come up and greet Noah. As Andre said, Noah had completely become a celebrity. Under such circumstances, Noah could only answer. You came to me because of this? No, this is just by the way. Liliana's expression became more serious. I came here to inform your excellency that there is news of God. Chapter 464. In a room on the top floor of the hotel, Tony sat cross-legged on the sofa, holding his sword and wiping it constantly. It was apparent that he was in a good mood. In front of Tony, Paul and Andre were also sitting on the sofa, but they seemed to be trying their best to persuade Tony. However, due to Tony's disregard, they seemed to be on the verge of tears. A hint of anger even appeared in Andre's eyes, and he was on the verge of exploding. But even so, Tony wasn't moved at all. He continued to wipe his sword and hummed a tune, completely ignoring Paul's and Andre's words. Gotcha. With the slight sound of the door opening, Noah walked into the room, instantly attracting the attention of everyone in the room. Yo, Noah, you're here? Upon sight of Noah, Tony's sloppy attitude disappeared instantly. He gazed at Noah with a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. Your prey is here. Erica and Liliana followed Noah here. At this moment, Liliana took a step forward and asked Tony in a respectful and questioning manner. Pardon me for being blunt, Salvatore. Even though I've heard about this matter, do you really intend to let an ordinary person slay a deity? Lily, I think you'd better give up, Erica said with a vexed expression, which was rare of her. How much time do you think we've spent on Salvatore in the past 3 days? But Salvatore hasn't changed her mind. This can't be described as unscrupulous anymore, right? Liliana was speechless for a moment before turning to Andre. Andre, do you think this is all right too? Just like Miss Erica said, how much effort do you think I've spent on this stupid king in the past 3 days? Andre sighed tiredly. But Salvatore has no intention of compromising at all. We have no other choice. Your Excellency Noah. Even Paul turned to Noah and asked. Do you think this is all right too? Everyone's eyes were focused on Noah. In the past 3 days, Noah's deeds had already spread throughout the magic societies in Italy. Now, as long as it was a magic association that belonged to Italy, they would definitely know that a man named Noah Doria had blocked the magic sword of the leader of Italy, the King of Swords, with his human body. To put it bluntly, even if this incident wasn't enough to be recorded in the history books, it was enough to attract the attention of the entire magic world. I believe that in the current Italy, there shouldn't be anyone who would feel that Noah is inferior to those who have the highest honor of the Holy Knight rank, right? Even so, it was still too irrational to challenge a god. After all, even if it were those who could be said to be the pinnacle of humanity, if they were to challenge the gods, it would be fine to seal those weak gods, but if they wanted to kill the gods, it would only be a daydream. Unless a miracle happened. Such a miracle had only happened 6 times in the past few hundred years, resulting in the birth of 6 godslayers. It was easy to imagine how difficult it would be. No one doubted Noah's strength. But killing a god wasn't something that could be done with strength. Therefore, almost no one thought that Noah could succeed. It all depended on whether Noah himself had such an understanding. Unfortunately, Noah had already made a decision. Everyone, you don't have to say any more. Just think of me as the kind of stupid person who overestimates himself and wants to challenge a god. Noah gave his answer tactfully. If I fail, you can just let your alliance leader step in. Well, before I became a god slayer, I was much weaker than Noah. Tony waved his hand impatiently. He's an opponent that I acknowledge. How can he lose to a mere god of disobedience? ? Hearing this sentence, whether it was Erica, who valued beauty, Paul, who had the identity of the commander-in-chief, or even Liliana and Andre, they all cursed in their hearts. A mere god of disobedience? Not many godslayers would dare to say that, right? However, that was what Tony said. It wasn't because Tony was so strong that he could trample on the god of disobedience like an ant. It was just that Tony was talking nonsense with his own subjective impression. Compared to the god of disobedience, Tony obviously paid more attention to the so-called opponent, Noah, which was why he said so. Perhaps, in Tony's heart, he had already determined that Noah couldn't fail, right? Should I say that he's really an idiot? Since even Sir Noah said so, it's useless for us to object. Paul shook his head and looked at Tony. We only hope that if Sir Noah fails, you can immediately rush over and deal with the god of disobedience, who brought disaster to the people. Don't worry. Tony smiled confidently. There's no need for that. Looking at Tony, who had no intention of changing his mind, everyone could only smile bitterly. To be honest, Tony might really believe that Noah could successfully kill a god more than Noah himself. Noah shook his head with a smile and looked straight at Paul. So, Mr. Paul, did the god of disobedience really appear? Yes. Although the place where it appeared was far from Rome, we still received the report. Paul finally became serious when it came to business. In the past, magic societies like us that were far away from the place where the god of disobedience appeared could only passively wait for the god of disobedience to cause trouble. But this time, because of your request, we were lucky enough to collect the information in advance. Just this morning, the Bronze Cross also received the same secret report. Perhaps because the society she belonged to was hostile to Paul, Liliana was not willing to be outdone. It is said that the god that appeared this time seems to have the appearance of the god of youth, and it hasn't caused any trouble yet. It seems like it's looking for something. God of youth? Noah and Tony looked at each other. Gods were originally born in myths. Whatever form they had in myths, they would generally be in that form. And there were many gods in myths that appeared in the form of youth. The god of youth who seems to be looking for something? Noah pondered for a while before asking. Do you know what god it is? We haven't found out its real name yet. It was Erica who answered this question. Erica looked at Noah with a curious and provocative gaze and shrugged very casually. However, there is information that someone has witnessed the god of youth turning into a gust of wind and disappearing. So, the other party should be a god related to the wind, right? Wind? Noah frowned at first, but then he relaxed his brows. Is there any other information? This god that appears in the form of a youth will only appear in some ruins and seaside. Paul sighed aloud. There hasn't been any trouble yet. It should be because this god is still looking for something, and he hasn't found it yet. If he finds it, then it won't be so peaceful anymore. In other words, is this the calm before the storm? Tony couldn't help but clench his sword. His eyes gradually became bright, but his expression was very conflicted. I really want to go and meet this god, but it's Noah's prey. Ching, are you really not going to think about it? Erica seized the opportunity and said in a tempting tone. Maybe it's a very powerful god. Liliana, Paul, and Andre also looked at Tony expectantly. No one wanted to see the battle between the god slayer and the god of disobedience because every battle meant that there would be a price to pay. For example, the collapse of a building under a powerful force was a common occurrence. However, instead of letting the layman deal with the god, everyone present was obviously more willing to see Tony take action. You don't have to persuade me. Don't look at me like this. I'm very righteous. Tony curled his lips. So, where is the god of disobedience now? Sardinia. Paul said. The god that appeared is in Sardinia. As soon as this sentence came out, Noah, Tony, and Andre were all stunned. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They were in Sardinia 3 days ago. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.